we saw, well, in our series with Super JJ and Game King yesterday, we saw so many double muzzles. It was crazy. So it's kind of acknowledging that, well, I can't counter Nekkers with muzzle because he's got it too, right? So pretty crazy stuff going on in terms of deck lists. But let's head into the first game as we get this series underway.
Yeah, we see some Northern Realms and some Skellige. Very popular decks in this tournament. We've seen Henzel, we've seen Radovid, we've seen a lot of great decks. From Freddy, for example, with Lambert, great inclusion. We're going to see what we have here in store for us and what each variety of the deck each player wanted to bring here to the first match.
For sure. What do you make of this opening hand for Northern Realms? I mean, triple Dunbanners in the hand of Hannah-chan is potentially not ideal at this stage of the game, right?
But there aren't any, commandos, for example. There's no multiple units that you don't want to see in hand, for example. So they're not completely bricked. Maybe not ideal, but in the end, not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, he also has the problem of dead Natalis right now as well. He has all 3 of his tactics cards actually sitting in his hand, meaning that Natalis has nothing to pull from deck. So personally, I find Hannah-chan's opening hand here a little bit problematic, although we'll probably see that marching orders come out to potentially get another Blue Stripe Scout out through using a Reaver. So I think that's not the worst hand in the world for Hannah-chan. Tailbot, however, is sitting on a hand he's probably pretty happy with.
Yeah, I think seeing Lugos in your hand round 1 is great to stop any kind of strategy your opponent wants to develop. I think in the end, both hands are pretty similar. I think they're not too bad. Could be worse. But like you said, 3 tactics cards in hand, not fantastic. Dead Natalis, something we've seen with Freddy, for example. Not something you want to see in your hand, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Freddy definitely struggling with that in previous series. Many dead Natalises all round. But this looks to be a fairly traditional opening by both players. Hannah-chan going to be tempoing out with his Blue Stripe Scouts, which, really helps build up units that he's going to be playing on, like later on, like Temerian Infantry. And then we just see Skellige, doing their classic discards, see things like Warmongers and whatnot coming out.
And Lugos here looking to aim to destroy that Blue Stripe Scout, just to try and maybe play around that Reaver Scout can come out later on and deny that as a possible solution to take out these Blue Stripe Scouts from your deck. In the end, maybe not going to affect Hannah-chan too much, but he does have reinforcement there as well, so I think he would be fine there.
Yeah, and 4 is the real sweet spot, actually. Lugos is a perfect counter to Blue Stripe Scout here, because essentially what happens is you manage to discard a unit that synergizes with just the act of being discarded, seeing that Clan and Crate Raider coming out of the deck. But you do have another answer to get a Blue Stripe Scout out, so not the end of the world for Hannah-chan.
And marching orders will pull out that Reaver Scout, which will allow it to thin out your deck completely and bring out all these, cards that you want to see in round 1, not so much in round 3. They're not really finishers, just act as, tempo swings that have a little bit of thinning as well, which is always what you want to see in these decks that want to be very consistent in this gameplay.
Yeah, absolutely. But a pretty expensive use of reinforcement. I mean, it kind of is and it isn't, right? You just played reinforcement for 10 points, but at the end of the 11 points, but at the end of the day, it does mean that you've lost potentially a very clutch card. Although when you see things like Death Mold in hand and stuff, you may be less worried about that.
We do see King Brand coming out possibly quite soon because it does synergize well with the cards that Tailbot has. That are really his game plan, I think. Cards like Ceres, cards like Morkvar, cards like Olgierd. You want to get them out as soon as possible just to make sure you have that carryover for round 2 as well.
Yeah, definitely. I expect to see the Olgierd and the Morkvar dropped pretty soon. Typically, you do tend to have maybe one of those in hand at the start of a game. So I imagine we'll see it going to be a King Brand play, because you do want to get that established as quick as possible in case the pass does happen. And there's Morkvar on screen. Like you see, when he's discarded or destroyed, he resurrects immediately. So when discarded with Bran, he will jump back out onto the board at 5 strength.
Exactly. You see Gremlins coming out quite soon as well, which is an indicator that both players know each other's deck lists, obviously, for day 2, and they know, what kind of weather they have and don't have. And I think Tailbot isn't too worried because there is no weather for Hannah-chan here, so he decides to do that Gremlins fairly early on, just to get, that fog going, get some points over a long round.
Yeah, and there's an interesting thing to be said here as well, because those units in the melee row are boosted up. It means that fog hits the highest unit, so they don't actually get damaged. So if you clear skies with Death Mold, the buff doesn't happen, because clear skies only buffs units damaged under weather, and these aren't. So clear skies are really low play in this instance.
Yeah, it's a very, it's something you don't really expect, you don't really think about too much, but it's very key to keep track of these very small point differences that might, in the end win you a game. So yesterday, Tailbot beating Ira Habit by a single point in the end, so it might not seem like much, but in the end, these points do matter quite a bit.
Yeah, for sure, especially when you're trying to create all sorts of space when it comes to spies and stuff. And we're going to see, like, Hannah-chan is doing what Northern Realms very typically does, which is kind of outpace other factions in the first round. These scouts are just wonderful, but I do think Hannah-chan's going to struggle potentially a little bit with his hand from here on out. He has Radovid, which is a very nice answer for things like carryover, but those Dunbanners are sitting with nothing to strip armor from.
Yeah, exactly. This deck, Hannah-chan does not run any spies, for example, so he can't really counteract the carryover in round 2 by using a spy. And if he does let some of that carryover squeeze through round 2, for example, Olgierd, he can't dry pass, and that creates a lot of problems for him for round 3 as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, how do you see Hannah-chan proceeding in this round? Oh, there we go, that's the pass. Just what we were talking about. He ran out of his high tempo, and he acknowledges that. And he's going to move on into round 2.
He does give up round 1, which allows Tailbot to obviously win this and have last say in round 3, for example. But he makes sure that he can't, really lose card advantage in round 2 as long as he can keep up with Tailbot. And that makes it so that round 3, they're going to go in even cards instead of, being 1 card down, which is not what you want to see, of course.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things to point out as well is that Radovid is just going to synergize so nicely as soon as that Olgierd pops out of the deck, because you can shut down that Resurrect and make Ceres much, much harder to get out in round 3. But he just drops a Harpooner, moving the Scout into the melee row to take the round.
Yeah, Harpooner not a card you normally see in discard because it doesn't really synergize well, but it has found its way there for the past few patches because it's just great at creating points, really. It has, that high ceiling in the long round where you can get, maybe a, 15-point bronze, which is fantastic. And other than that, I can normally find, 12 to 13 points of value, which is quite decent for a bronze unit.
Yeah, we start to see some more tempo options coming out for Hannah-chan now, with the Temerian infantry available to be mustered from the deck in hand, and we see a Muzzle too, which is a very, very good card against Skellige indeed. And those triple dub banners are still kicking about, but this is a risky mulligan, right? You don't want to get out that extra Temerian, you don't want anything that will just be a dead card essentially in your hand.
Yeah, and you risk keeping the Commander's Horn. He only has that for John Tal, so he can't use it in this round. And obviously, he hasn't won this round. If Tailbot wants to bleed this out, very far in, then he might just have to use that Commander's Horn and, run out of that Dijkstra or that John Tal's possibility. So it's tricky. If you do mulligan that Commander's Horn, you can't get an Infantryman, like you said, which is something you don't want to see. So it was a tricky mulligan for sure for Hannah-chan.
Yeah, very, very difficult position that his hand has actually put him in. It's interesting because he has cards that are standalone very powerful, things like Muzzle, Commander's Horn, Shani, Death Mold. All these are great cards, but there's no bread and meat there, right? There's nothing solid to prop up his round. He's got Dun Banners with no targets, he's got Temerians, which really you want to be playing when you are pushing the advantage. And he's going to struggle a little bit here as Tailbot looks to have a very powerful hand with Warmongers and Battle Maidens available at his disposal.
Yeah, and the Muzzle here we see can target that Olgierd. It's only a 10-point swing, but it also denies not only the carryover for your opponent and adds it to your carryover for round 3, also denies a Ceres tick, which might not seem like much, but in certain situations it could be the the decider between losing or winning a game. So I think that Muzzle can maybe find space and maybe be a very, very powerful card here. We see it coming down immediately because Hannah-chan also realizes this.
Yeah, it's a very smart Muzzle here. I mean, you could go for 6 points more value by getting an 8 strength, but the utility and the Ceres ticks, like you mentioned, denied. Very, very powerful indeed, but I'm just going to go by, we always like mentioning points per card, right? So points per card, those Warmongers are fantastic value, like you just saw them on screen. When they're dropping those raiders onto the board, they're just really, really great, and their synergies with the Battle Maiden is fantastic.
Yeah, it's a very tight deck. I mean, it's been pretty much just played consistently for the past 2 months, maybe 3 months, because it has a very tight core between the discard synergies and the fact that it has carryover as well, which is something that not all decks have and can really use as efficiently as discarding King Brand does. And I think, like you said, just all the bronze cards synergize well and have a great average points per play, basically, which allow it to really do well in any kind of round.
Yeah, for sure. And so we see them coming out now. Unfortunately, I didn't actually quite get to grasp what he discarded there, but it'll be something that he's aiming to resurrect out later. We can't look at the players' graveyards at will, unfortunately, right now. But these are just great cards for setting up your entire game plan, and they're not exactly too weak to boot, actually coming out at an 8 strength.
Yeah, and in a bleeding situation like Tailbot is in right now, he can control the pace of round 2. He knows his opponent doesn't have the Spy because of those open deck lists for day 2, and it means that he can really set up his deck by maybe discarding a card he doesn't want to see in the top decks, in the top deck pool for round 3, for example, and allows it just to have a more efficient and a more consistent, draw in round 3, which just makes it a lot better as well.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the things that's really, really great to point out as well is that if these Temerian infantries come down on the melee row, that's going to be setting up a 15-point lacerate. So Hannah-chan is doing the very sensible thing of playing around Whale Harpooner, right? You want to deny Whale Harpooner targets, because if you keep everything on one row, you can't move anything, and it's just going to take 1 damage when it goes onto its own row. Little does he know, there's that lacerate sitting there in Tailbot's hand, and he's kind of accidentally playing into that by being actually intelligent and playing around the Whale Harpooner.
And once this Ceres does come out, Radovid can be used to lock both the Ceres and the Morkvarg. Obviously, the Morkvarg only 2 points, not going to get the full value from the damage as well, the 4 points of damage that Radovid does do to the targets he locks. But considering he's in a bleed situation, doesn't need the points really. You either want to save Radovid for round 3, which is not fantastic as a finisher, depends a bit on your opponent's board. But when Ceres does come out after these 4 rest ticks, she's very close to coming out. I think it's just 1 tick away. When she does come out, he can lock it for the next turn, and because the points aren't necessary, he can just get rid of some of that carryover for round 3 for Tailbot.
Yeah, absolutely. Those 7 points. I know you just saw Ceres on the screen at a 6, but Bran actually strengthens things by 1 when he discards them. So Ceres very traditionally comes out at 7 points. So 7 points, it could be huge in a very short round. That is almost, well, we saw, like, you know, JJ taking the win with 8-point Archgriffins earlier. You know, 7 points is a lot in a very short round. And so Ceres is just super, super key here.
And again, the Warmonger coming out and discarding a Freya, which means that Tailbot is clearly playing to draw that Restore and try and get that 8-point Freya to res even another unit, maybe a Warmonger into a Raider, and get, you know, just a big point boost from a Silver card, which is fantastic.
Yeah, Skelliger have got some absolutely beastly Restore targets these days. They've got Priestesses of Freyas, they've got Battle Maidens, they've got Gremists. There's really a whole range of utility that you can play at 8 base strength, which is pretty powerful if you ask me. So Restore absolutely is what Tailbot is gunning for here, because it's such a cool card. And this is actually denying the Morkvarg and getting Ceres out, making it more difficult for him to get Ceres out next turn.
When you have, you know, if you're close in points, you normally don't want to do this because it does bring the Ceres out and it makes your tempo swing even negative sometimes. Maybe in this case it was negative because obviously hitting a Thunder for 2 points, not fantastic. But because he has so many points ahead and he knows that Tailbot is really just trying to trade off his, you know, low value cards in this round, he's okay with, you know, giving his opponent some points just to be able to lock this Ceres with the Radovid.
Yeah, for sure. And I really like the idea of muzzling the Olgierd and killing the Morkvarg. I know, of course, the Morkvarg's not dead right now, but his strength halves when he dies, and so he'll go to 0 and be banished. He won't come back next round. He doesn't stick on 1 like Ron did. So this is really good, because this means that Tailbot now needs 4 resurrections. He can chain a Freya because he's discarded a Freya, but he needs 4 resurrections to get that Ceres back out on the board.
Yeah, that pass was perfect. I mean, I think he really knew that Hanachan was looking to lock there. By passing, obviously, if Hanachan would have played, he would have lost a play in round 3, so it's not an ideal situation, not worth it at all. But in the end, passing there, he draws the Restore, he draws the Muzzle. You can't really complain. I think those are fantastic draws for round 3. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think this is really nice draws for Tailbot. It's exactly what he was going for. Like you mentioned, he's discarding anything that wasn't Restore, essentially, to increase his chances of drawing it. And mulliganing into that Muzzle is going to give him some great options too. Although it may actually be hard to find decent value from the Muzzle for him. So we'll have to see how the round pans out for that one. But that Restore is going to be very large. What I'm wondering, and see if you can fill me in on this one, how does Hanachan get use from these 3 Dunbanner heavy cavalries?
I mean, we do have Stennis, which draws a few points. We do have Shawnee as well, which gives some armor as well. And we have Trololo. So I think all 3 are ready to go and ready to steal some armor. Obviously, Trololo, you can steal it multiple times as well, so it can work that way as well. I think Hanachan drew perfectly as well. He put back the Commander's Horn. He has his Donatalis target. He has Shawnee. He has Dijkstra. He has Radovid. He has a lot of very high tempo plays for this round 3 to finish it off.
Yeah, it's actually kind of exciting to see this final round because honestly, like you mentioned, both players have drawn pretty fantastically, right? We have almost perfect hands for both players coming out here. We see core concepts such as Natalis into Horn, Shani, Dijkstra, Trollolol, Radovid. Each player has their power pieces in action, so we're going to have to wait and see what is the Restore target here. I imagine it would potentially be the Freya. It could be the Battle Maiden as well for Whale Harpooners. We shall see, but really great hands for both players. Excited to see how this one pans out.
Radovid in this case is going to be a decent amount of points, 14 points total, but like we said before, with Ceres going to come out in this round already, doesn't matter about carryover. It's not going to do much more than that, so the lock's not so useful. Still 14 points for a leader, not the worst thing in the world.
No, absolutely not. And I believe something to point out is that Restore does not count towards Ceres' timer, does it? Because it returns the card to your hand. It does not immediately play it from the graveyard, so it does not count as a resurrection, meaning that even if you chain reses that discarded Freya, I believe Tailbot has maximum 3 reses and Ceres cannot be played.
I think the most important to note here, I think, even more than that, is the fact that
3 times.
There is no Coral in his hand, and Coral would be fantastic to really get rid of that Trollolo and all the armor that he has on him. He's a very well-armored troll. In the end here, I think without Coral in hand, it might be just too much armor and too many points that can't really go punished. And there's no Igni, there's no Scorch, there's no Coral. There's nothing that punishes these big point cards. We're going to see the Dunbanner Heavy Cavalries coming out at a huge amount of points. It's going to be really tough for Tailbot to stop this.
Yeah, as you almost said, those dumb bananas are going to be incredibly high value in this round. My apologies, I was mistaken about the Ceres, by the way. He can, of course, get it out. It was on a 3 timer, and also Raiders count towards it. But we are going to see a lot of tempo coming out from Hanachan. I'm actually liking Hanachan's position. He can deny much value off of that Muzzle. Muzzle, of course, usually such a high impact card, but it's going to struggle to be more than like 14, 16 points here. He's not going to get any utility from it.
And we see Hanachan not scared at all of that Coral. He has it in the deck because he knows it's in his opponent's deck. Only 2 cards left in the deck, but still not really stealing that armor from the Trollolo just yet. It's 13 armor already stacking. That's going to be a very big Dunbanner Heavy Cavalry. And of course, John Natalis, we just saw the huge swing with the... It can be a dead card sometimes, but when you have the Commander's Horn, a 26-point gold card, that thins a card as well from your deck. That's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Hana-chan is not Freddy, so it is not a dead card, and it plays the Commander's Horn for a great amount of value. But it's very interesting, this Coral read, because you'd think that, once that Trollolol hit about, 10 plus armor, he'd have been eager to strip that off with a Dun Banner and, get it ticking again and maintain the tempo from the armor. But he's just not scared of this Coral, is he?
Yeah, we see his armor smith coming down, which I think Tailbot knows that there isn't much more damage coming from Hana-chan. This is not a Hensel deck that has maybe the ballistas, the battering rams that do a lot of damage, have a bit more control. It's really just a deck that plays by itself. It's a very proactive deck that just tries to get the maximum amount of points without really disrupting their opponent. And we don't really see much more damage threats. So Hana-chan decides to really Tailbot decides to play that armor smith early on, and we see 2 Redanian elites coming out from Dijkstra.
Yeah, really great card, Dijkstra, of course. DJ Extra dropping the beat, playing the top 2 cards from your deck. This is the classic Northern Realms high roll finisher. You have to be a little bit careful that you don't actually mill yourself when you're playing Dijkstra in your deck, because you see right now, Hana-chan is on 0 cards, so of course this is a little bit ideal world, but were something like an Avalok to be played, it would actually destroy you. So Dijkstra is a little bit high risk, high reward, but a very fun card, and we see 2 Redanian elites coming out off of it.
And the heavy cavalry, you're talking about the targets for it. I think they have enough targets, for a year maybe of armor stealing. They have the Verdanian elites, they have the Trollo as well, the Stennis. They even have the armor smith armor from the Warmongers as well, which is really interesting.
Yeah, do you know what? I think Hana-chan actually made an extremely intelligent read here. I think he played Trollolol and it didn't get coralled. And first card it didn't get coralled, he just went, alright, you don't have coral in your hand. And if so, that is such a fantastic read for him to make.
Yeah, it's a risky play, but with risk always comes a high reward, and I think Hana-chan's going to get it with a 17-point Trollolo, the biggest I've seen in my life. It's going to be absolutely massive once he goes and gets that in the end.
Yeah, that is a pretty big Trollolo. It's going to rack up at least, 3 more turns worth of value, so that should be coming at 23 armor, which would be a 30-point Dun Banner heavy, which is a very, very scary thing to think about. And Hana-chan is, of course, still very sensibly playing around Whale Harpooners, but he has seen Tailbot's list. He knows there is a Lacerate in there, so he's going to take a little bit of a hit from this Lacerate, but the armor will tank some of it.
And the heavy cavalry, of course, it can steal armor from the opponent's Redanian elite, it can steal from Tailbot's Redanian elite, but it will buff it, so probably not ideal. I think he'd rather just steal from the Stennis and steal from the Trollolo, or maybe the Shawnee Res as well. Yeah,
while it would certainly be some stylish BM, I don't think you'd quite want to strip the armor off an opponent's Redanian elite, unless you're very, very confident in the round. So we're going to see, yes, Shawnee giving armor. There's an abundance of targets. Those Dun Banners had to be very patient, sitting in the hand from round 1, beginning of round 1, but they are finding their targets here in round 3.
I mean, with this point gap and the cards in hand, I think you can be pretty confident you're going to win this game. And also, of course, Tailbot with his, his very well-known "you will lose" statement yesterday. Maybe Hana-chan wants some revenge, wants to BM a little bit. He could steal that armor from the Redanian elite, but yeah, I think it would be maybe just a little bit impolite. But in the end here, I think Hana-chan, if you can't stop his strategy, if he gets all these cards like he perfectly did in this round, he thinned to 0, a very consistent deck, he's going to create a lot of points here, way over 100, which is absolutely massive for round 3.
Yeah, and even though Skelliger is hitting, it's pretty decent tempo, no coral draw, but we see Restore, see some great targets, see some reses, and a row-stacked Lacerate. The fact of the matter is that uncounted armor is just terrifying. Armor, a deck that actually saw changes a few months back because it was way too reliable, but nowadays it's a little bit riskier because it can be countered, but when it's not, it is fierce, and you are going to see that in this round.
Yeah, we do see Ceres coming out. We do see probably a Freya into a into a Harpooner coming out very soon. Ceres, after these 4 res ticks, comes out back to the board. Pretty much just free carryover if you plan your deck correctly and have those res ticks ready to go in rounds 2 and 3. We see a Lacerate's going to be pretty good as well, although it's going to hit some armor too. But in the end, I think just Hana-chan just has way too many points. You see Trollolo with 21 points of armor. That's absolutely massive. He's ready for any kind of siege. He is well protected.
Absolutely. This is going to be a huge Trollolo that is just going to boost him way beyond the reach of Tailbot's hand. I mean, Tailbot's got some great cards available, but it's simply just not going to be enough. We even see Hana-chan just stealing the armor off a Raider because he can just bide his time and then drop that huge Dun Banana bomb.
And he has seen that Lacerate in Tailbot's deck, so he does know that Tailbot does run that Lacerate. Instead of stealing the armor from the Stennis, it was also 3 points of armor, he decides to steal from the Warmonger, and that way protects the Stennis from that Lacerate damage and gets those, 3 little cheeky points that are going to matter in the end, maybe.
Yeah, cheeky points are the best kind of points, and here it comes. That is going to be a 27 points Dun Banner Heavy Cavalry, and while Restore is a good card, it's not that good of a card. So this is going to be game 1 going to Hana-chan unless Tailbot can pull off a miracle.
Yeah, I think Tailbot has no chances to restore this game here for himself. I think he's going to definitely lose
Very good.
Not going to be any chance for him to come back. He does, just go ahead and pass because he knows that he cannot get this point gap, closed. And of course, Hannah-chan gets his first game, maybe a bit unexpected for the Polish fans watching the stream, but I think it's fantastic that, I mean, such a deck's played so well, so consistently, 0 cards left in the deck, and Hannah-chan really performed.
Really significant win as well, playing a somewhat rarer form of Northern Realms these days, really focusing in on those army units, and taking down such a meta staple is really important, right? Like, getting the win there is just huge. I mean, that's such a great way to start a series. If you're playing something niche, you take down a meta staple, and then you have your slightly more meta decks, you know, especially Emir available to you. That's a great thing, right?
Yeah, definitely. Being able to play Emir in this next game, maybe getting a win, maybe playing around, maybe you know, maybe going first, and you have the Emir with a spy synergy in the Cantrell. It's not as bad in most cases. So I think, yeah, we see Speletal coming out straight away from Tailbot. His strongest deck actually, he performed really well with it. And again, Hannah-chan does not have those clear-cut answers for this Speletal deck.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're talking about meta picks. We have 2 very popular decks on the ranked ladder today. We have the ale-based spell Scoia'tael, made popular by our crocodile friend, and we have Emir Spies. Now, this is a very interesting matchup. Muzzle can be very important here for spell Scoia'tael, but when it's Nilfgaard, how does Nilfgaard answer this? Menno?
I mean, Menno and Infiltrator is the biggest combo, and I think it's the only thing in all of his decks that could have countered this deck. So I think this is the perfect matchup for Hannah-chan, especially going now with a 1-0 lead already, having to win this game. He has that one answer, that one chance to get rid of one Protector at least with that Menno Infiltrator combo that can be, you know, a 30-point swing maybe in round 3. But of course, there are many more Protectors, and there's also an Operator in Tailbot's hand. So 4 Protectors to deal with, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, absolutely. We're talking about cards like Muzzle and Scorch being important. Tailbot isn't running those. Like, this is not the spell Scoia'tael you're used to seeing. Spell Scoia'tael is traditionally a very control-focused deck that then utilizes a big end-of-game finisher. It's kind of like win 1 round through control, win 1 round through your big finishers. But this is a very tempo-based spell deck, which is fantastically, you know, unique to the game so far. We've just seen it coming up in great popularity. I'm sure Twitch chat is going, haha, spell Scoia'tael unique, but genuinely, a tempo-based spell Scoia'tael is something that's actually quite new to the game. So that Operator is going to just get so much value.
Yeah, the inclusion of Sages over Farseers is the big difference here. The deck hasn't changed too much. I mean, we see inclusions of cards like Yorvith, for example, that after the recent patch got a little bit better, and also the fact that there's less Thunders and a lot more Ales, so a bit more of a drunk version of the Speletal deck. But of course, without Thunders, you don't have control. Without control, these Enforcers are going to ping for a lot of points.
There we go. We've seen Lambert today, and now we're going to see Eskel taking out that Operator. This is basically just Hannah-chan acknowledging, like, okay, I've seen your deck list, I'm aware that I'm not going to get value from this Eskel, right? So I might as well hit a decent target of the Operator and bring Roach out for 18 points.
Yeah, I think really the only target or the best target in this deck. Obviously, both players have studied each other's deck list very well, want to know exactly what to counter, when to play certain things, when to get max value from their cards. And like you said, we saw Eskel, we saw Lambert. I don't think we're going to see Vesemir, unfortunately. We're going to miss that Witcher trio, but we do see a very big swing from both players using their gold cards early on.
Enormous Yorvith goes off as well, buffing 6 cards in the hand of Tailbot and killing a full value target, meaning that Yorvith was just dropped for a whopping 20 points. Absolutely love Yorvith, one of my favorite recent changes to the game. Great to see him in action here as well.
Yeah, and Hannah-chan aiming to get max tempo out here, maybe thinking about playing Cantarella early on, maybe trying to flip the coin flip in this turn. An early Infiltrator as well. Infiltrator cards are going to be very useful in round 3 to proc those Protectors and get the spy tag on them. So a very early use here. Maybe trying to save some cards like Emissaries and Enforcers for a later round where you think it's going to be longer. I mean, you have to really, know when to use your bronze units and your bronze engines to get max amount of points from them.
Yeah, I think what he's trying to do is he's trying to play a very sort of off-key tempo here. He's setting up a very powerful Nausicaa Brigade, because that will, of course, do 7 points damage, killing that Yorvith. Won't anymore, but he was trying to set up a very sort of, like, off-kilter form of tempo to, like you say, preserve those Emissaries.
Yeah, and Tailbot there proving you wrong, buffing that Yorvith, not allowing the Nausicaa Brigade to get that synergy with it. Obviously, Nausicaa Brigade, a card that does 7 damage to a spying unit and also buffs itself by 4. I think you have strong opinions about this card. It does seem very powerful on paper.
Yeah, famously a card that I may have complained a little bit about. But yes, it is a very powerful card, and it is a very powerful tempo tool. Typically, you see it used with cards such as Iris, but here it was just a great tempo option for Hannah-chan that has been denied. But here we go, we see the triple row stack is up. That is an odd way of saying that, but you have units on all 3 rows, meaning that beer will work, and here comes the tempo.
Yeah, Sage a card that gets those spell cards from your deck and then banishes them, but it's able to use the Magma Ill multiple times and get a lot of points, especially if it can't go punished. We don't see Menno right now in Hannah-chan's hand, so you can't really punish that. The very big, spies that are buffed by Magma Ill, for example. the spine units, at least, a disloyal tag on them, which is really the big answer that I think Hana-chan wants to see. Maybe not now, maybe save it for round 3, but definitely something he wants to see this game.
Yeah, for sure. And here we see the Enforcer coming down. Typically, you would see this much earlier in the round. We're quite a few cards in to see the first Enforcers dropping, but I do believe Hana-chan was trying to preserve those emissaries, but he realizes that now this is a round that he's got to contest.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think he definitely knows he wants to win this. If you give Spelltell really the chance to dictate round 2 and 3, they can really choose when to play the Protectors and when to save them. And if you drop 3 Protectors or Ethne and 2 Protectors in round 3, they can give you absolutely massive amount of points, and it's really dangerous to really give Spelltell the chance to control the game.
Yeah, absolutely, because when they can control the game with leaders like you just saw, like Ethne, available to them, the utility on offer is just enormous. Typically used for control with things like Artifact Compression and Scorch, but in this deck, it's just tempo on tempo, and that's what Ethne provides as well.
And of course, we can also see Ithleen as a control option with a Thunder still in the deck. Only 1 Thunder, but it can be used twice by Ithleen because she does use the spell twice, and then obviously there's a copy of that card. And she can kill, for example, 2 Enforcers if they do come out. So he has that option to control Hana-chan's board just a tiny bit.
Yeah, and here we see another brigade coming down. He's going to shoot that emissary. Despite having performed his duties well, the emissary will be summarily executed, so he may be resurrected with a Vicovaro medic to perform his duties once again, and then probably get shot again as well.
Yeah, Emissary leaves a very hard life, but he's vital for the cycling of this deck. It really brings out all the bronze units, gets the bronze synergy with the Enforcers and the Imperial Brigades, and gives you a lot of points if you're an Emir player.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of cards that, because of the unique playstyle of Talbot's Spellscoia'tael deck that we see here, there's a lot of cards that are going to find it difficult to find max value. Vanamar is one that is just going to be a little bit lost in this matchup, because even getting 6 units on the board for an overdose may be difficult. He's going to have to wait well into a round, and that late into a round against Spellscoia'tael, you're probably going to be significantly behind.
Exactly, like its name indicates, Spellscoia'tael plays a lot of spells, and if you play a lot of spells, you don't play that many units. We do see a lot now in round 1 because it's really the round where you want to set up these units and play all these spells that kind of thin themselves out. But in round 3, for example, especially with the Gwent Protectors, Venimar not very good, not going to find any kind of damage with Overdose. So he's probably going to be played, I think, fairly soon in this round right now.
Yeah, I really do think one of the key cards going back in this matchup was that early Operator. I think the amount of value that is stacking up in Talbot's hand compared to what is relatively a dead card for Hana-chan, it's just a fantastic play. And those Dolbothan Protectors, every time you play a special card, getting boosted by 1, and now they're Gwent, there's that big finisher we were talking about.
Yeah, that's the engine unit of the Spellscoia'tael deck. You have all these different options that you can, go with Thunders, go with Macam Ails, go with Sages, go with Farseers in round 1 and 2, but you never take out Protectors from a Spellscoia'tael deck. They're the base of the deck, and then the real finishers in this deck.
Yeah, for sure. And we see an Emissary coming down. A little bit of a suboptimal draw from this Emissary, either an Enforcer or an Infiltrator available. I imagine he may have been looking to chain the 3rd Emissary, potentially, but unfortunately for Hana-chan, it doesn't quite go his way, and the Emissary gets shot again. We
do see Amir taking back that Vicovaro medic, obviously, so he does have a chance to get that Emissary chain going, but we do also see Ithleen with Thunder being able to zap those Twin Forcers, a very high-tempo play that also results in a lot of utility for Talbot as well.
Here we go, Pound of the Prophet, I think, may have called exactly what's going to happen, taking those Enforcers off the board, and that is just going to cut Hana-chan's tempo in half.
The only problem here is we see Royal Decree in hand. We've seen Yorvith, we've seen Ithleen, we see a Goliath in hand, and the player can only run 4 golds in this version of Gwent that we're playing now. And that means that Royal Decree right now would be dead, so a Goliath cannot be played in this round. That also means the Protectors would maybe have to be played in this round to maybe try and edge out ahead and win it, which is a very dangerous thing, I think, here for Talbot.
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of the crucial thing when you're playing against Spellscoia'tael, right? Bleeding out those Protectors is how you win the game. They're the vital essence of Spellscoia'tael winning a game of Gwent. Once those are gone, you either win or you lose. Like, there's nothing else coming for you then, So we're going to see some pretty tricky decisions from Talbot here. Like you mentioned, a Glace has got to be mulligan next round for Royal Decree to have any effect. And a Glace wouldn't really be hitting too much right now either. So it's a pretty tough decision time for Talbot.
Yeah, Glaze, the card we saw yesterday, Talbot hit the Commander's Horn. Playing against Northern Realms, fantastic. You can hit Monsters Nest against monsters, also fantastic. Against Emir, a deck that doesn't run any spells at all most of the time. Really, I mean, nothing at all unless you count the Van Hemar Overdose, for example. If it can't find that Overdose, it'll be just a 9 strength gold, which is, not quite optimal. It's a bit under average.
Yeah, it's not particularly fantastic, but, interestingly, mulliganing the Glace over the Royal Decree. Oh, what am I talking about? Of course he's mulliganing the Glace. I'm not good at this game, but, yeah, sorry, I thought he clicked the other card, but he mulligans the Glace correctly. And that's going to result in a Clear Skies, which you got to think might have been a tech intended for people who weren't Hana-chan.
And Hana-chan winning the round on even. He could also, of course, he can play this Cantorella here, get the card advantage back. And now we're back to even cards, and Tilbot has to continue playing here because Hana-chan did win the last round, and he can really dictate this round too. And Tilbot, if he passes now, obviously he loses the game, so he can't really do that. It's not an option for him. And I think it's interesting. Cantorella is a card that he could have just dried past Hana-chan and gone for a very long round 3 if he wanted to. But I think he wants to control this round more, bleed out those protectors. We obviously 4 of them in hand for Tilbot, so it's quite a bit of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And the interesting thing is here, when you lose card advantage when you're playing a card such as Artifact Compression, that becomes a really serious issue, because Artifact Compression, you want it to find its biggest possible value, and typically you'll be playing your highest value targets last in the round when you have card advantage, so Artifact tends to get denied a lot of value.
Yeah, Tilbot could always change the card art here for the Protector and make it into an Artifact Compression. The points wouldn't matter too much, it wouldn't swing at all, but maybe it just doesn't like the Protector card art at all. Like we said here, he's a lot of points up, so it is a viable option, but maybe not the best in terms of winning this game.
Yeah, but here we see the beer coming out again, putting Tailbot 38 points ahead, but it doesn't matter because Hana-chan has 6 cards in hand, and if he plays anything else, Tailbot's got to keep playing. There's no point playing maximum value plays right now because he's got to keep playing. It doesn't matter. Hana-chan could drop 1 point right now, and Tailbot would have to keep going into the round.
And we do see Venhimar playing that Clear Skies. Obviously, a Goliath can be used now and can steal that spell, and Tilbot goes right for it because it really is his only target. These decks that are, these Ymir decks, I think nothing has changed much with them in the past few months, and they don't really run any spells at all, and Tilbot knows this.
So here we go. So there's a Goliath not stealing anything. That is not a fantastic move. A Goliath struggling to find value here.
I mean, you don't have to use it right now because if you save it for round 3, it'll just be a dead card round 3. Royal Decree, of course, adding 2 points to the 9 strength gold body comes out at 11. But again, maybe not the best use of 2 gold cards in this deck.
Yeah, 2 golds, 11 points. It's not great, but it is just a delaying action at this point. And from Tailbot, you got to think we're going to start to see Artifact Compression maybe just drops on that Nausicaa Brigade. 3 points silver. Seems good, but those double-handed protectors are just so important.
Hana-chan was looking for 1 card specifically to win this matchup, or at least to really dominate the round 3, and that card was Menno. And good news for the Chinese viewers, he has found it. It is in his hand. He is ready to get this combo off with his Infiltrators. Yeah,
Menno is so important here. You can easily swing Menno in for, almost 30 value. If those spell scores are huge with those double-handed protectors, Nilfgaard just dominates with Menno. It just wipes one off the board. Infiltrator itself is great. Menno has a decent body. It's just a really powerful play. But we're going to see Protector coming out over Artifact Compression, perhaps hoping to catch that big Infiltrator coming out of Joaquim.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Artifact Compression can also be used against that, like you said, that Joaquim, and it may be more points if the Infiltrator comes out at 19, I believe. So it is a pretty high just value unit. Coming out at 19, it's very high value, and it gives Artifact Compression a solid 17 points of value, plus whatever it adds on to the Protectors, because it is a spell. So it's not too bad to keep for round 3, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And Sage is quite a nice draw here as well. That represents a full hit of beer, which is good. But yeah, we're going to see some pretty clutch Nilfgaard play here. Honestly, I got to like this hand from Hana-chan.
Yeah, he has all the combo pieces. He's a card up because Spellsway Tell running ADC does not run a spy. It would make, draws quite a bit annoying, I think, especially with the Protectors. And yeah, that's the fact that Tilbot does not have a spy. Obviously, he lost round 1 on even cards. So he goes a card down into round 3. Having 1 whole card less than your opponent is, very bad news for you.
Yeah, 1 card down in round 3 is bad news for anybody. But when you're playing Spellscore Tell, it can be catastrophic because those double-handed Protectors, they represent 90% of Tailbot's power in this round. And we know one of them is going to die to Menno, right? So this is just such a tricky situation for Tailbot to be in.
Yeah, like we said before, I mean, you really have to see that there is, not being able to play reactively. You have to play with Menno at the very end. You have the time to do it because you have card advantage as well. And that allows you to really set up the Infiltrator play, followed by the Menno play, and make these Protectors a disloyal unit, tags them, and it allows Menno to work and get that very, very big swing he's going to get here at the end.
And here comes the Infiltrator peeking out from behind his curtain. I always find a way, he says, as he tags that double-handed Protector as disloyal, allowing Menno to immediately destroy it. So I love Hana-chan's position in this game. I just think if you get 1 card up over Spellscore Tell and you take that first round, the game's in the bag. And Hana-chan is certainly a good enough player to capitalize on this.
And Emissary, seeing 3 of them in round 3 is not something you normally see. Normally see them in round 1 to cycle out the deck and bring out all the bronzes immediately. But here we're seeing 3 in round 3. It's a rare sight. I think it's fantastic we're seeing this. It means that Hana-chan didn't thin as much as he would have wanted to at this beginning, but he still found all his key cards. So I think he's not too worried, to be honest.
Yeah, Hana-chan actually having 2 games in a row now where he started out with a slightly bizarre hand. This triple unbanner heavies, and now failing to get those emissaries and those late enforcers out in round 1, but he's just held on wonderfully and managed the game fantastically. Really big fan of this player. He just seems to be micromanaging his games so well.
Yeah, he's brought very efficient decks that can pull off their strategy consistently every single game is extremely important because you can get guaranteed results game after game against pretty much any matchup, which is something you want to do in a tournament. You want to make sure you have the highest chances to win every single matchup against any leader, really. And I think Hana-chan is really, he's doing this in every single game against Tilbot.
Yeah, Hana-chan is playing wonderfully right now. He's even just denying artifact compression targets. This is not looking good for Tilbot right now. That Menno swings in for an enormous 24 points worth of value, but it is much more than that realistically, because that is just, it's Tilbot's last big power play disappearing.
Yeah, exactly. And we see a Sire as well. Can shuffle back cards like Roach, for example, which is great because it allows you to play Roach twice playing as Nilfgaard. And Nilfgaard is a deck that has so many points that you don't really need a higher point silver. And a Sire serves as a utility silver that really helps in having guaranteed maximum points for round 3 with these gold cards as well.
Yeah, double Roach and Nilfgaard is fantastic because not only do you get that round 1 tempo, it can then also be used as a simple burn for Vilgefortz. Of course, the Vic of Iron Medics here will be taking precedence as the Vilgefortz targets, but it's a nice card nonetheless. Asaya really seeing a lot of play these days, so we're going to see Tilbot try to bring it back into this match, but it's just going to be ADC, bringing out a Sage, bringing out the Beer, or the Queen. He hasn't even got a Beer, he's banished the ones that he played, so Thunder goes on to Menno, rather feeble at this point, and personally, I can't see a way back into this round for Tilbot.
Yeah, we see Artifact Compression being worth only a maximum of 9 points if he plays with Sire now because of the buff to the Protector as well. And we see a very strong Vilgefortz and a very strong Joachim still waiting in Hana-chan's hand. I think Tilbot knows he's in a lot of trouble against Nilfgaard. You can normally always read what your opponent's finisher is going to be because it is such a consistent deck. So I think he knows that Joachim and maybe a gold card is coming in soon, and I think he knows he's in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I think that this is looking to be a very strong game for Hana-chan, which will set the series into 2-0, which means that if Hana-chan wins, he's going to the final, and Tilbot is playing for survival. But the game is not quite over yet, and, there could always be a surprise. We've been surprised before, so we'll see what happens.
Gwent is a game that has many surprises. You can't always predict 100% the results. There's always, a bit of luck, a bit of RNG, obviously Joachim doesn't draw you a guaranteed card. It's not like a reinforcement, for example. It draws a card at random. Obviously having 4 cards in your deck, I think Hana-chan knows his deck pretty well, knows exactly what's there and what his options are. So I think he has a very high chance of not misplaying this. And of course we see Vilgefortz as well being able to burn that 1 strength
Vilgefortz can just burn the 20 strength old mana Protector.
It can do that as well.
There's no reason not to. I mean, the likelihood of, okay, a Beer's a pretty good draw, that's 12 points, but there's nothing that he could have drawn that would have been better than that Protector. So yeah, Tilbot calls GG, and that's going to be 2-0 to Hana-chan in this series.
When you win as Emir without even playing Joachim, you know you did something right that game. I think Hana-chan did a lot of things right. We see him being very dominant here. Yesterday, Tilbot, a player that finished very dominantly over Arrowhabit. I think maybe Hana-chan getting some revenge for his Chinese, the player also from China, his teammate maybe, both players flying here from China all the way. I think they were both, maybe as a team trying to, band together and try and get at least one good result in this tournament. And Hana-chan maybe serving some revenge here for Tilbot, starting off 2-0. Very strong finish, but it's not over yet. Tilbot can come back and maybe a reverse sweep like Freddy yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. Tilbot, you will lose. Looking about 66% wrong right now. And apologies for Dandelion's relentless flirting too. But we are just getting ready to head into Game 3. And it sounds like we're going to see King Bran facing off against Through the Hoods.
It's a nice matchup here. I think it's going to be fun to see it. Both players have very strong decks here. I think Hana-chan, very interesting deck. He has a lot of things that maybe weren't in the most of the other Square decks, like the Elven War Dancers, that do themselves serve as a bit of a boost at the start of a round, but also maybe as carryover in round 2, preventing a dry pass.
Yeah, I really love this matchup. I'm looking forward to this one. I love me some Scoia'tael right now, and War Dancers coming in for the mulligan. Such a great card. War Dancer is one of those cards that's always been waiting for its spot in the meta, I feel. But we see it being mulliganed and jumping onto the board. If you haven't seen a War Dancer before, it's quite a unique card, actually. When it's mulliganed, it is instead played from your hand and you draw another card. But it is mulliganed and double gold weather makes an appearance. How do you see the weather doing in this match against these armor smiths?
I mean, Tilbot does have the answers to this. He has the armor smiths, he has the Gremlins, but it's still very dangerous. You can't really go into a long round 3 if you don't have the guaranteed answer. We don't really see Gremlins in hand right now. And although armor smiths are decent, in a long round 3, they really can't heal that much. So it makes that Gremlins is really the only clear solution to get rid of this weather.
Yeah, this is a very interesting hand. I love the triple marksman and Zoltan Chivet. That represents so many points if it goes off right. Of course, those marksmen are fantastic cards for muzzle and all sorts of devious things to kill them, but in a dream world, it goes on very, very well with Zoltan. However, we also see great little bits of mini combos in Hannah-chan's hand, like this Operator and Dwarven Agitator.
Yeah, exactly. That's, I think, was one of the best. I think we talked about it yesterday as well. We touched on it. Operator, one of the best targets is this Agitator because it's absolutely dead for Tailbot. Has no kind of ability that might help him in some situations. It's if you don't have dwarves in your deck, and obviously Skellige, not too many dwarves, it'll be absolutely terrible to have in hand.
Yeah, Skellige not the faction most famous for playing dwarves, so it is a very, very safe bet here. But that Morgvarg comes down nice and early. Hannah-chan not having muzzle in his hand. He does have it in his deck, but not in his hand, so that Morgvarg is safe for now, barring the Ragnarok.
And Tailbot, obviously going second, you can play much slower. Doesn't have to be super worried about this weather right now. He can just, get his Morgvarg out, his Ceres out, his Olgierd out, and get that carryover ready for round 2. And if Hannah-chan tries to counter that with his Yavin, guess what? Tailbot has Ulrich as well. So it's going to be hard for Hannah-chan having to go first and having to stay in this in round 2 as well. With the carryover, it's going to be really tough for him, I think.
Yeah, Bran, a fantastic deck on the coin flip victory, especially when you view cards such as Lugos and stuff in a very reactionary sense. And we actually see a spy coming out, and there is Muzzle, drawn from Yavin's special card drawing ability.
And this is really interesting. If we see a pass here from Tailbot, it opens up for a much longer round 3, obviously, because Hannah-chan would have that golden weather, and he has control of round 2. But it also makes it so that Hannah-chan cannot get card advantage back because of the carryover. Unless Hannah-chan can get rid of all the carryover, which is obviously unlikely with Olgierd in the graveyard, it's really, really tough here for Hannah-chan to try and claw back in round 2, even if he does win this round.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think this round is quite important for both players because, like you say, it's so much about dictating the pace of the game, right? If you can guarantee a long round where you're playing into weather, that's a great thing to be able to do as Scoia'tael. Although, I do think of all of his lineup, actually, Tailbot has picked the best deck to deal with this.
Exactly, and both players playing their spies. I think Hannah-chan's a bit favored because that Yavin does run right into a few Fury Meteors coming out from the sky, so he is going to get damage every single turn, whereas obviously Ulrich staying quite healthy on that melee road, no weather there.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see that Gremisters hasn't made an appearance in Tailbot's hand now. Skellige is good at getting through their deck, so I wouldn't be surprised if he gets them out later, but right now, that Ragnarok is doing work, although there is an Armorsmith waiting to heal all the damage.
And maybe we'll see the Armorsmith right now because it will, obviously the Ragnarok will kill that Morgvarg and will reset some of his strength, and Tailbot does, I think, care a lot about these rest ticks for the Ceres, and also just in general, the points for round 2 and round 3 of carryover.
Yeah, I mean, he could block the Morgvarg from getting hit. Ragnarok prioritizing the highest strength target. There we go. So he's going to block the Ragnarok, actually, with Madman Lugos, because, of course, he will tank the hits for Morgvarg. But, yeah, pretty interesting to see this weather go on so long. I wonder if the Armorsmith comes down soon, or whether he's just trying to keep it because he knows there's double gold weather in the lineup.
Yeah, like we said before, because he won the coin flip, he can play this much slower. He doesn't have to go for those max points at the moment. He doesn't have to stay in this round 100%. He can pass pretty much at any point in time, although he'll obviously open himself to a very long round 3, which is quite risky. But the Armorsmith doesn't have to be played immediately. He can wait out a bit, try and get max value, healing maybe both the Yavin and the Lugos for, a lot of points for a bronze card.
Yeah, it's interesting the Dwarven Agitator plays here without operating it. Is this...
He might just look for a round 3 operator where his opponent can't really mulligan away that Agitator. Might just wait it out. I think he knows he has 2 more Agitators. He has a very high chance of drawing them. And he'll just save that operator maybe for round 3. Maybe deciding just to try and get that Morgvarg ticked down as soon as possible, getting max value on that Ragnarok every single turn.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's an important point that you make about he knows that he's going to see another Dwarven Agitator, and this isn't like the previous game where when you operate a Double Thunder Protector, it's going to be getting all of that, boosting from the spells you play. An Agitator is always going to be an Agitator, right? So there's no necessary advantage to operating it early, other than guaranteeing have it in your hand, but the movement here was very important to kill that Morgvarg.
And important to note as well, Muzzle in Hannah-chan's hand. We saw it before. Muzzle stealing an Olgierd in round 2. It's quite a good use for the card. I think it makes Muzzle a very, very good card in terms of utility, not just raw stats. Another card that got really good utility was that Lugos, not just dealing damage, but also giving that Marksman. Makes for a lot of just, saving and preventing damage from that Marksman is absolutely huge.
Definitely, and Ceres coming out round 1 to close the gap is very interesting. But with this Morgvarg looking to get banished from next round and only Olgierd coming out, could be problematic, this Ceres timing for Tailbot here.
Yeah, and because this Ceres wasn't in the graveyard right now, that rest tick on the Morgvarg does not count. Morgvarg, when he dies, he goes back to the graveyard and then comes back, obviously at half his strength. But those rest ticks not counting for Ceres. In the end, these players have a maximum amount of rest ticks in their deck, and they know this. They have to, play around it. And Ceres obviously becoming a little bit weaker because of this.
Yeah, for sure. I think Ceres may be a little bit problematic and unreliable for Tailbot now, but we do still see him taking a lot of damage from this Ragnarok, but there it is. There's the muzzle. I love muzzling the marksman because it gives you that extra little kick, and because it's moving, it does shoot back at you once it gets muzzled. But here's the double muzzle, our first one of the series. I was wondering when it would happen. There is the now infamous muzzle into muzzle.
And Hannah-chan deciding to not save that muzzle for Olgierd, just trying to get that marksman to get this pressure right now in round 1. Obviously, he has a huge point gap. Weather's still ticking. He might decide to pass depending on Tailbot's next play, because obviously this is a big point gap. And he knows that if he continues playing, he will not have control of round 2, and he will go a card down if there is still carryover from Tailbot. And we do have still Olgierd in the graveyard, so there is that going for Tailbot at least.
Yeah, Tailbot's got a great opportunity to catch up here with an Armor Smith onto that Yavin would be absolutely devastating for Hannah-chan, especially when, bearing in mind that I imagine he would also heal the Warmonger. That would get armored, and that is a real boost to withstanding that Ragnarok. So we may well see this Armor Smith go down in the Siege Row and block out that Ragnarok as well as catch up. And here we go, that's what he's doing.
And Yavin, a card that was played so many turns ago, getting all that weather damage in the back row, but now Armorsmith coming in for so many points for a bronze card. It's really just way higher than average. And normally when you're playing a game and you get, a 20-point bronze card, for example, you feel good because you know you're getting much more of a higher average per card than your opponent, and that normally wins you games sometimes. So I think Tailbot very happy with the Armorsmith.
Yeah, really love his patience there and allowing that Armorsmith to just, rest up in his hand until it could get its maximum value. Restoring 10 points on that Yavin alone has really brought him back into this round.
And of course there, Zoltan trying to get another target in the melee row. Morkvarg about to die. He wants Ragnarok to keep on getting more and more points every single turn, and he wants to make sure that he has that target to soak up some damage in that front row as well, while also moving his own marksman that does get that damage buff as well.
Yeah, and it seems like he, sort of sees this match going for going for a little bit longer because he's willing to break some of that armor up and just get that Ragnarok ticking its attrition damage again.
And using Zoltan in round 1 is a big thing because obviously you want to keep some kind of finisher for round 3. This deck obviously it has great answers with the Golden Weather for a long round. It has marksman, a lot of damage that can end up happening, and it makes for marksman or maybe worth 15 to 17 points, maybe more. But using Zoltan in round 1, it makes it so you have a little bit less of a finish for round 3.
Yeah, it's really crazy. I mean, I think Scoia'tael does benefit from having a very high baseline for cards. Like, cards are very good in Scoia'tael. Agitators and Dwarven Mercenaries with Marksmen on the board. That's a lot of points. When you're moving those Marksmen around your own side of the board, the Mercenaries buffing, the Marksmen's firing, they're great. So he could just be going for that, right? He's going to be getting these Agitators out, and he's going to be operating them for them to just get massive value with those Marksmen on the board. So while Zoltan, you're right, it's spending his finisher. I think just in terms of card for card, punch for punch, usually Scoia'tael would win it, but going up against Bran with this is dangerous.
And Tailbot finally having to pass. Obviously, if you've had Hannah-chan spend, a few of his cards, maybe saving that 13 card round 3, making it a 6 or 7 or 8 card round 3, it's not as bad. Tailbot thinks, I think, he bled out that Zoltan, for example. He got a lot of important cards out, and he thinks it's okay to pass here. Obviously, Hannah-chan, because of this carryover, because of the Olgierd, and not having Yavin to play into obviously Tailbot's side of the board, there's no chance to catch back up in card advantage.
Yeah, and actually it's interesting that we don't see another Agitator come out yet for the Operator to agitate, to operate even. And this is going to be tricky. He's going to thin out his deck quite nicely with these Blue Mountain Commandos right now, but honestly, that Operator, he may regret not operating the round 1, although the deck efficiency is pretty good, and he could see round 3.
When we're talking about finishes, you might just see Bruverhook, for example, being used to get that Barclay Elves out, and that is a big finisher that you can get with Hattori later on as well. So, I mean, you have that chance to see, maybe that as a finisher instead of the more typical that we saw, a few patches ago, just Zoltan and maybe a Marksman or, moving your opponent's units. We also saw Marigold's Hailstorm, for example, a few patches ago, and that's changed a bit. We've seen a bit of a difference here. Maybe plays made more towards buffing your own units and not so much damaging your opponents.
Yeah, there's some really dangerous stuff at play now. Hannah-chan has to play, this is going to be Bruverhook and Barclay to, like you say, enable that Hattori for round 3. But if that Hattori, if the Barclay Elves pulls out an Agitator, it's one less chance to get one in his hand to operate.
Yeah, and that can mean trouble for Hannah-chan because the Operator, that's the only target you really want to hit. There really isn't much better targets because obviously these Marksmen with Harpooners, for example, you have that movement, so they're not fantastic if Tailbot gets their hands on them. And it's the same with Mercenaries, really.
Yeah, Hannah-chan does dodge that problem though, and he does get a Dwarven Mercenary out, actually increasing his chances of drawing a Agitator next round. So that's pretty good. It is keeping the Operator Dream alive for now. But other than that, I can't imagine Hannah-chan wanting to bleed too far into this round, especially not with the Drought in hand.
And Tailbot knows he has to make up these points now if he wants to be able to go a card up into round 3. Hannah-chan, this is his big point swing for this round. I think they want to really try and find this gap and maybe think that it's going to be enough to make Tailbot spend 2 cards and that way equaling out the card advantage because obviously without Yavin, you can't really do that in this round 2.
Yeah, I don't expect to see Hanchan play too much more into this. Looks like we might see the Restore just setting up that Sigdrifer target for next round. And it's going to be a Priestess of Freya brought back to the hand. 8 base power Priestess of Freya. That is one dense Priestess. My goodness.
Yeah, it's not something you normally see. Obviously, Freya's, they revive a unit, so they're very low strength, so they have a very strong ability when they get deployed. But 8 strength Priestess of Freya feels good when you have that Restore in hand and that combo with the Priestess.
Yeah, but we also see a huge point closer for Tailbot there, catching right up to Hannah-chan. And we see Drought coming out with no Gremist. This could be really damaging.
And Hannah-chan, that was his one last option maybe to try and find a pass. He didn't find it and he had to decide, do I keep on going and lose value on Drought for round 3, or do I, bleed completely and you use Drought now? And he goes for using it now. Maybe he catches Tailbot a bit off guard. I think he knows he's not going to catch up in cards, maybe, and he wants to get the Ceres out at least so that Tailbot has less carryover.
Yeah, this is almost like Hannah-chan, using his laser vision to detect the no coral last time. Now he's seeing, well, you don't have a Gremist, I can see your hand anyway, so this is a really great play because it might force reses onto Armorsmiths, which is way lower tempo early on than resing something out like a Warmonger.
Exactly. Not having Gremist is a big deal here for Tailbot. But like we said before, I think the biggest thing here is the fact that he's going to be a card down. And if you go a card down into round 3, if you have a lot of cards, it doesn't, it's not that impactful because obviously with many cards, the average points per card are kind of diluted and doesn't matter as much. If you go with only 2 or 3 cards, it's a big difference in terms of percentage of points.
Yeah, I mean, this Drought is doing 6 points of attrition damage, so do you think Hannah-chan pushes really far into this round?
If he does, he's going for maybe a 2-0 or a chance to equal out card advantage. If he doesn't, I think it would be smart because he might go, like I said before, with 1 card into round 2 and his opponent having 2. That's 50% more cards. That's a big difference.
Yeah, and it's not like there's even no real coral target or anything. Even a 10-point target, that's 13 value from a coral. While 13-point gold, not exactly earth-shattering, it's not dead, right? So Tailbot has a lot of high-value cards in his hand, and Hannah-chan will know this. He knows playing against Skellige, they pack a punch. So I'm very interested to see what his next move is here.
And we do know there's only 1 Armorsmith in Tailbot's deck, so he only has the one that is in his graveyard. Of course, Drought taking every turn is going to do a lot of damage as well, so maybe Hannah-chan thinks he can 2-0 here at least, try and equal out the card advantage with the help of that weather. That is a lot better against Armorsmiths because it does kill the smallest units, or damages the smallest units by 2 points every single turn, and that means that you have to really time those Armorsmiths perfectly to not let these units die, unlike Ragnarok, for example.
Yeah, but I imagine we may see this coral go on to potentially the Barclay Elves to deny the Hattori finisher, because if you went to say 1 card v 1 card, Hattori is pretty much one of the best cards you can have in the game. But it's actually going to be the Marksman leaving Barclay Elves open for the next round. That is a very crucial moment in this game because Hattori Barclay Elves is an extremely powerful finisher.
I think Tailbot is a bit worried by the fact that this Drought is continuing to tick and he doesn't really have the guaranteed answers for it. And that means that, he had to use that to get a bit of tempo with that coral. If you do the Barclay Elves, obviously you help in, negating some of the game plans that Hannah-chan has for round 3, but it makes it a lot worse in this round, for example, because he just doesn't get enough points with coral.
And this is a very interesting operator target. What do you make of this? Giving your opponent a Dwarven Mercenary.
It's much better than a Marksman because those Harpooners would synergize well with a Marksman, but the Mercenary, it's a decent card. It's obviously not an agitator. It gives your opponent something decent, not just 2 points with that dead dwarf. But, it's not ideal, obviously, for Hannah-chan, I think.
Yeah, and especially considering his opponent is playing in weather, I find the idea of giving him movement cards to help escape that quite strange, because if you're forced to move his cards back into weather more than you have to, you're denying yourself the buff value from that, right? So I found that a very interesting operator play. I'm not sure if I like it.
One important thing to note, though, is that Operator, not only does it operate a card, the fact that it adds a card to each player's hand adds an extra round to the game. And with Weather ticking, that makes the Operator worth 6 more points because of that Drought taking an extra turn, which could be massive if he's going for a round 2 bleed.
Yeah, absolutely. Very astute reasoning there. That is a great point to raise with that. But we see that Priestess of Freya getting healed up to 8, and the Warmonger is absolutely huge. So Armorsmith just finding value over value in this game.
The Drought's going to take down, it's going to find a lot of damage. Hannah-chan maybe here noticing he doesn't really have the answers to continue to bleed. There is a big point gap here. He can't really do much here. And he's going to just go into a round 3 with 1 card less. That could be massive. You have 25% less cards than your opponent.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going into round 3 now with 2 Mercenaries and Hattori going up against 2 Harpooners, a Mercenary and Battle Maiden. The draws are going to be key here. War Dancer, nice little mulligan card to be fair. It's going to counter the carryover of Olgierd at least. We see triple Dwarven Mercenaries coming out.
This is something you don't normally see. Mercenaries normally cards you pull out with agitators, not cards you play outright. Obviously, without using agitators, it loses 2 points every time, so it's not ideal. But of course, with the War Dancer in hand, you have to mulligan the War Dancer. You don't want to keep a War Dancer in hand, because that would be absolutely terrible, playing 3 points from hand. Not ideal either.
Yeah, while it may be sort of next level mind games, I think playing blank War Dancers through your hand probably isn't particularly advisable. So we do see it get mulliganed, and we see Gremist come out. Bet he wishes he had that last round.
The most interesting thing to see here is the fact that depending on the mercenaries you have in your deck, pulling Barclay Elves into an agitator might be a dead agitator, because agitator spawns a base copy of a dwarf you have in your deck. If there are no dwarfs in your deck, you can't spawn a copy of anything.
Oh,
and that would make agitator not fantastic, and it makes Hattori a lot worse, combining it with the Barclay Elves, of course.
And I believe that's the case. I think the only dwarf that he can hit is an agitator, right?
We have seen many mercenaries. One of them is copied from Operator, so we have lost a bit of a count there. There might be one left, but not more than one, I think, for sure. It's hard to count because most of the ones you do see are coming out from agitators, so they're not really the ones from the deck, they're just copies. So it's hard to keep count, but if that is the case,
yeah, I believe
Hattori
we
loses
saw
a lot of value.
Oh, I believe we saw one agitated round 1, 2 played round 2. So I think he's got a mercenary in his deck. Of course I'm now gonna be incorrect and I've just cursed him, but I'm pretty sure he does have a mercenary in his deck. And I think we only just saw 2 in the graveyard then as well. So hopefully for Hana-chan, for his sake, he does have a mercenary available to him for that Barclay Elves res. He's gonna, there we go. I think he's counted and realized that he does. So this is kind of turning into a right points fight.
Yeah, Hana-chan was looking at the same thing we were looking at. I think he knows that could be an issue. He has counted and he has decided what the option here is, what the best option here is to get the max amount of points. Obviously, round 3, cards don't matter that much. He's hovering over Blue Mountain Commando. Not the card you'd normally want to see.
He's rezzing it so he can move it with Dwarven Mercenaries for the buff value. However, that is, yeah, not exactly the traditional Hattori finisher, but it's going to be getting, every time that you move that with a Dwarven Mercenary, it's 5 points. So these Dwarven Mercenaries in his hand now represent 12 points each. So 36 points in hand for Hana-chan. Is it enough?
You do normally want to see, a card that has low strength with the Hattori, but a very good deployability. Cards like Terubio, for example, if you buff the Hattori a little bit, or cards like Barclay Elves. Summoning a card that has 3 points, although it has a great ability, but no deployability, makes it, kind of iffy. A 6-point silver, not the biggest tempo swing for round 3.
Yeah, it's certainly not what you're used to seeing coming out of Hattori. You're used to that very, very powerful sort of, Hattori, Barclay, Agitator, Mercenary, which is 20. It's like, it's Scoia'tael's essentially, it's their only one-card finisher, right? It's like Scoia'tael Tibor almost. But Hattori gets punished for his failures, getting shot by a whale harpooner, and now we see the Blue Mountain tempo come out.
And again, when you're a card down in round 3, you want to have, those very big plays that can maybe, just because they're such great plays, can crush your opponent, even though he has a card more, and try and win the game. Using Hattori for 6 points, not what Hana-chan had in mind, I think, when he was envisioning this matchup, I think, maybe yesterday night. So not fantastic for him. Obviously, he's got some good synergies there with the Blue Mountain Commando. A lot of buffing going on with the Mercenaries and the buffs, obviously for the ability that the Blue Mountain Commando has. Every time he gets moved, it gets 2 points get added to its value, which is great, but will it be enough to win this game?
I simply don't think it's enough. I mean, Tailbot, there's 24 points sitting in Hana-chan's hand right now, right? And Tailbot is already 4 points ahead, and he's got Battle Mains, he's got Whale Harpooner, and he's got a Mercenary. I simply don't think it's enough.
And he also has, of course, he's be able to be reactive here. He could have maybe killed, obviously that War Dancer there because he has that option with the Harpooner dealing damage, but he can't kill this Blue Mountain Commando. He can't stop it in any way. There is no Coral. Hana-chan is slowly catching up, but is it enough? It's just not enough points, I think, in these.
No, simply the base strength of the Mercenary and the Harpooner mean that Tailbot takes this one. So Hana-chan is going to be losing this game to bring the series back to 2-1, Tailbot not getting swept, staying alive in this series. And, he's got, to be fair, these games are being closer than the scoreline reads right now, so Tailbot taking a game, of course, absolutely vital for him. And we'll see if he can equal it out in the next game.
Well, the games are only closer than it seems because the last cards aren't even being played. We saw Joachim being kept in Hana-chan's hand last game, and of course here we see a Mercenary not even having to be played from Tailbot's hand. I think there's a big disparity here, and I think the main thing is card advantage in round 2. Both times a player is going a card down into round 3, not in ideal situations, not very close situations, and it means that one player will win very one-sidedly.
Yeah, absolutely. But that means that Hana-chan does have to stay on his Bruverhoog, so if you're a fan of double gold weather, then you're going to be enjoying this one because Hana-chan will be playing Bruver again, as it is his final deck that he's required to win with, whereas Tailbot can pick between his Radovid and his Ithne. And it sounds like it's going to be Ithne versus Bruverhoog. We're going into some Scoia'tael, Civil War, Elves versus Dwarves, Spells versus Axes. Who you got to give the edge to in this one?
Well, we see Tailbot with a very interesting deck here because he has the Clear Skies. he has the Ida, which is a card you don't normally see in Spell Square Tell. The silver slots are normally very, tight. They're mostly used for spells most of the time. We do see the Operator inclusion as well, but Ida is in this deck for Tailbot, and that means he has the answers for the Golden Weather, which is one of the biggest tools that Hannah-chan has for going for him.
Yeah, and also it's not even necessarily a guarantee that he'll have the targets for that Gold Weather. Gold Weather could very easily just be hitting 2 or 4 points of damage a turn. So having things like First Light and Ithne at your disposal and Ida Remain, I've got to give the edge to Tailbot in this one, actually. I'm liking this Scoia'tael deck from him so far.
Not only that, but Hannah-chan doesn't have any great answers to the very, high-strength units like the Protectors in round 3. There is no Scorch. There is no, unit that can really get rid of these high-strength units. There's no Igni either. There's no real punish for these high-strength units that are Burst Plates in round 3 as finishers. So, I mean, Tailbot, maybe a reverse sweep going on here?
Maybe. I think it's very early. At 2-1 down, I think it's very early to be calling the reverse sweep. But the dream is alive for Tailbot, and it's certainly looking pretty good for him right now. I mean, he's got Weather Clears in this deck and Armor in his next deck, so that Gold Weather should be dealt with fairly reasonably. But that's not to deny the huge amount of points. And one thing that Tailbot doesn't have is removal, so those marksmen could do a lot of damage with Zoltan.
Although we see Ithli in hand, there is that very, that one Thunder that is in his deck he can remove, and it's exactly 7 points, so it can get rid of those marksmen. Might not want to use, he hasn't been using the Quen with Ithling for most of the times, he's been using an Elven Mercenary to use that. But we see the Weather coming out immediately from Hannah-chan, just like in the last game.
Yeah, really interesting that he's just opening up with Weather, saying, you're going to have to deal with this in a low tempo play, so I can then storm ahead. But it's so interesting that Ithling that you touched on is so key, because that is like his one serious burst of removal, so he's going to have to wait for those marksmen to be in place to hit them.
Exactly, and we see because Hannah-chan did win the coin flip in this game, obviously we're alternating every single game, it means that he can play this Golden Weather, and if he can really stay ahead with his Golden Weather and, obviously equal the points, he'll be able to go into round 2 a card up. And like we said before, Tailbot does not play any spies, doesn't have any kind of Yavin because of the clash with ADC and the Protectors, and that can spell trouble for Tailbot here.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting to see the Operator usage in both decks here, but actually the Operator giving Hannah-chan a Dolphin Protector is a little bit better for Hannah-chan than Tailbot getting a Dwarven Agitator. Dwarven Agitator really is just a AAA Operator target. It's absolutely perfect. So there are spells being played by Hannah-chan, so the Protector won't be 2 points. It might even go to the dizzying heights of 5 or 6, but still really, really key Operator usage going on in both decks here.
And we do see a very interesting play going on here. Summoning Circle on Operator, 5 Protectors at Tailbot's disposal. That can spell a lot of trouble for Hannah-chan in round 3. If he's able to save those Protectors and use them all in round 3 without any clear counters, no Scorch to hit multiple Protectors, that can be a very, very strong finish for Tailbot in round 3.
I think this will be the first time I've ever seen 3 Operators on the board in a competitive game of Gwent, if it is played this turn. I hope it is before they start dying, because I just want to see it on the board. But yeah, really fantastic to see such a niche card just taking the spotlight in here.
Yeah, 3 Operators on board. The future's bright for Gwent. I think that some very creative plays can be made, even in tournaments where everyone's trying to play, obviously as well as possible, getting the best plays possible. But yeah, seeing 3 Operators, a card that can add a lot of creativity to deck building and to just playing in general. They create scenarios that aren't normally possible. 5 Protectors, 5 of one single bronze card, not something you can normally do within Gwent, but Operator enables this.
Yeah, and it's that Weather's gone now, so Tailbot, he's back in a little bit more comfortable place, but Hannah-chan has the opportunity to pass for the +2. However, against Spell Scoia'tael, giving up the first round can be very risky if you're Spell Scoia'tael, you don't mind doing it because you get card advantage, but what do you think? What's Tailbot's move here?
I mean, it's tough to say because, like you said, I think going, 2 cards down is always tough no matter what the scenario is, but playing as Tailbot with a very strong finish, if your opponent doesn't have, a finish to really answer that back, maybe you're fine keeping, 5 Protectors in hand and just bursting them out in round 3, even if you are a card down. But like I said before, not having a spy for Tailbot makes the situation a bit more complicated.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be an interesting round. We see Hannah-chan committing the serious power of the Zoltan. Very interesting how this player uses this card. Playing it very aggressively in round 1, both times that we've seen it, just using it as another big source of tempo without even having Marksman on the board. Marksman he really does seem to just favour as a Dwarven Mercenary target, so he can move it, buff it, and fire. But this is crazy to see Zoltan used in such an aggressive manner.
I think he knows that Ithling can get rid of those marksmen. He's trying to find, points and value out of the Zoltan, out of movement in general, by doing obviously on the Blue Mountain Commandos. A card you don't normally want to Ithling, immediately because it's just 3 points of strength. You can probably think, nothing's going to happen here. But we do see Tailbot committing to this Ithling, maybe going for Quen. He does go for the Thunder, kills both Blue Mountain Commandos, one that have already been buffed, so I mean, it's not fantastic either.
Yeah, absolutely. While he does get the maximum value Double Thunder Ithilien there of 16 points, the utility that he's lost in removing these marksmen is going to hurt later on. So very interesting how this one ends up for Tailbot, and if that decision comes back to bite him.
And like you said before, no more control here. We see only artifact compression. We see maybe Ithilien to Thunder. Not the most efficient play to make, but it is the only way to really deal with those marksmen. And those marksmen, if left unanswered, can create a lot of value from this movement synergy they have within this deck.
Yeah, Hana-chan's deck actually really nicely forcing Tailbot to play such a uncomfortable playstyle. This is a deck that, you know, it loves getting the beers out with the lads, you know, throwing the beers around, bit of tempo, unit on each row, lovely. But Hana-chan's deck is forcing Tailbot to almost play like traditional Spellscoia'tael, where he's got to constantly be reactive and defending and controlling, and his deck isn't tailored towards that. So Hana-chan managing this match nicely.
Yeah, and with the inclusion of Sages over Farseers, for example, it makes a big difference in terms of you know, the way that these cards and how the deck works. Because with Farseers, you have to really save them for specific rounds, because they're really your point generators apart from protectors, and your way of getting, you know, those points on the board in round 1 and 2. But here with Sage, it makes, I think, a lot more versatile. You can really, you know, spend them in round 1, round 2. It doesn't matter as much. But it is really interesting here. We do see, instead of an Ale, a Sage Thunder into the marksman. Another chance, another way to control here. Being able to play that Thunder one more time. Kind of like an Ithilien Thunder, but, you know, a little bit less points. But, of course, only a bronze card instead of a leader ability.
Yeah, we were both pretty shocked to see that Thunder come out. We both sort of, you know, looked a little bit surprised. But, you know, he's playing for value. He is playing for value. And now he can drop that Mercenary in the ranged row and start setting up those beers for tempo. But, yeah, interesting to see a non-control variant of Spellscoia'tael, or a lesser control variant, forced to play such a reactive playstyle. He wants to be playing tempo, and he's just not allowed to do it right now.
That just shows how well Tailbot, as a, you know, very skilled player in this tournament, can adapt to certain situations. Although he doesn't really, I can guarantee he doesn't really use Sage for Thunder most of the time, because it's normally not worth it. Ale, of course, being worth 5 more points. But in a situation, and with the threat of the marksman getting a lot of value over this long round, he does go for the zap there, and does decide to just zap that off immediately.
And we're seeing a Mercenary come out without being operated once again. So Operator, clearly a late round play for Hana-chan here, just not considering it in round 1, despite the fact that that Mercenary, you know, it was only 2 points more, right?
Yeah, and it's, I mean, the Operator, of course, it's high risk, high reward if you save it for round 3. If you get your pull, it's great. If you don't, it makes it, you know, kind of troublesome, because like we saw last time, he operated a Mercenary, which wasn't ideal for Hana-chan in round 3 last game.
Yeah, it's a really high value card to give your opponent. So I find Hana-chan such a fascinating player to watch, because he just has some wonderful playstyles that are really unique, and obviously it works for him, right? Like things like the very aggressive Zoltan, the very late game operators, really unique playstyles, which is great to see coming from this Chinese player.
And we see the Ale there losing value for Tailbot, only buffing 2 rows instead of 3. That could be trouble. I mean, you're losing points there for no reason, and Tailbot might be aware of this. Maybe he doesn't have, I mean, he could have played maybe the Sage into a Thunder again, but of course not really any targets on Hana-chan's board. So, I mean, it's tough. This Spellscoia'tael deck doesn't really have that many units, so it makes it tough to find sometimes value for the Ale on all 3 rows.
Yeah, it's such a great answer. The movement is so wonderfully good against the Spellscoia'tael. It's like, you need a unit on each row. Well, I'm going to make everything sit in the melee row, which is why the Dwarf Mercenary was played. It was to deny beer value. I just find it a little bit premature, like he wasn't in a space where he needed to do so. But it's interesting play coming from both these players, both forced to react very heavily to the opponent's deck. But right now, if you had to give an upper hand, who would you give it to? I think Hana-chan is playing this one really nicely.
Yeah, being able to win cooperative and stay quite far ahead of your opponent, maybe forcing him to go 2 cards down to win it, is always troublesome. Really, the fact that the Tailbot didn't dry pass in round 1, which you normally see with Spellscoia'tael because they don't play a spy, is interesting, but it makes a lot of sense, because obviously Hana-chan, in maybe a 14-card round 3 with Golden Weather, would be a big issue, although you do have clears from obviously from Tailbot as well, but it's hard to go into a very long round 3 with movement and Golden Weather getting so many points over a long round.
Yeah, definitely. And while we do see clears, it does one of 2 things. It either requires either a main to be drawn, which is really rough, or it requires Ithilien to be committed to a very low tempo play in playing that clear skies later on. So Gold Weather, even if it forces suboptimal plays, it will find its value in denying potential.
Yeah, we see Brewer coming out immediately. Could have saved it for Ida, just to get guaranteed weather clear. Of course, Hana-chan, I mean, obviously he's the one playing weather, so he doesn't really have to clear any weather. So my mistake there. But of course, getting the Barclay L's to enable that Hattori later on. Interesting play just to set up that round 3 finish.
Yeah, like Barclay L's such a fantastic card in this meta. It's just really great, giving Scoia'tael that ability to actually put a lot of points on the board with 1 card. And that's really, really vital because it's something Scoia'tael was lacking as a faction, and the introduction of Hattori has allowed it to be used super reliably. So that's why you're seeing so much Hattori this tournament. It's just a wonderful card.
Exactly. Before, you just used to be maybe Zoltan, maybe a finisher with Marigold's Hailstorm back in the day when that card was quite a bit of trouble for a lot of players. But nowadays you see maybe a finisher that doesn't depend so much on your opponent's board, and obviously with the gold change, the fact that they can't get hit by Marigolds, for example, it makes it so that maybe relying on Hattori is a better choice than a card like Marigolds, for example.
Yeah, we're getting to the point where the points gap is pretty crazy. There you go. As I was just saying, the points gap was pretty crazy, 32 points. Talbot had to pass here or just risk getting absolutely bled out of this game.
And now Hanatan has a chance to draw into the rest of his gold weather. He has a chance with Yavin as well. 2 spells left in deck. Drought, no need, comes right into his hand. He still has Muzzle from the Yavin as well, and he can go into a pretty long round 3. Does he want to, though? Does he want to bleed out these protectors first? He does have that Spy as well.
Yeah, this is such an interesting sort of dilemma. It's like, well, I want the round for my Drought, but at the same time, I don't really want you to have 4 Dolblathana protectors, and we see Muzzle going into the hand of Hana-chan. Will be interesting to see if that finds significant value.
I think Hana-chan dry passing or playing Yavin would have given him the same result, but he does have 2 dead protectors in hand. Obviously, 2 and 3 point cards, not something you want to save for round 3. You can't really mulligan them away either, so I think he's just going to play very, very slow. He knows that Talbot has no spies, and no summoning circle either, unless it was used at that point there with Ethan, but he didn't use it Talbot, so he does go ahead and just bring out his protectors. Very low point play. He doesn't really care. He's bleeding out his opponent and going into a long round 3, or at least, a fairly long round 3.
Absolutely. I think we're just going to see these Dolblathana protectors come out one after the other because the points value on those cards is irrelevant. All they say is, oi, Talbot, play another card. So that's what he's doing right now, just getting cards out the hand of Talbot. We may see 1 or 2 more cards, put into this round as well. We may see like a Lacerate or a Mercenary or maybe the Operator, but he wants to get cards out of Talbot right now.
And when your opponent plays such low tempo, when he's bleeding you so heavily, there is a chance to hero pass, but with so many cards left in hand, it's really not a possibility at all. Still 6 cards here left for Hana-chan. You can easily close this gap, so there is no chance to Talbot. He has to keep on playing here and start playing these protectors.
Yeah, I think a hero pass at 5 cards would be more of a psycho pass, to be honest. I think you're asking for it if you do that. But a 14-point Muzzle comes down. Muzzle managing to find reasonable value.
And there we go, Muzzle buffing those protectors as well, getting that little buff on the protectors that aren't really yours or your strategy at all, but still, it helps a little bit. Every single point counts. Maybe not so much in the situation where Hana-chan's bleeding, and there is, such a massive point gap already.
I mean, look at what's happening right here. It's just fantastic. Every card that Hana-chan plays is responded to with a super high-value card, whether it be Ithne, whether it be ADC or a Protector. All Talbot has to play are parts of his win condition. You're looking at the jigsaw pieces that allow him to win this game. They are all vital. Without one, he can't do it. And that's what Hana-chan's doing. He's just going, well, my cards are good, but your cards are crucial, so I'm just going to bleed them out of you right now.
So now every card that's being played is opening a better and better chance for a hero pass from Talbot if he decides it's necessary. He is going to be going a card down into round 3, and obviously he's being bled out of really his win condition for round 3. And this could spell a lot of trouble here and could be the win for Hana-chan if he can't really come back from this. So at some point, if Hana-chan gets risky, he might play too far into this and maybe open up a hero pass for Talbot. Although, probably unlikely it's to high skill level.
Yeah, I think if you hero pass in the semifinals of the Gwent Open, that is quite the hero pass. But arguably, it could be the right decision depending on the reads. So we see the Dwarf Mercenary coming down for a little bit of points. The points gap is not big enough for the hero pass. It would be insanity to do it at this point. 23 points in 3 cards is not a difficult feat, so Talbot has to keep playing into this round, and that is really rough for him. And you can see the look in his face. He doesn't want to spend these cards. And
like you mentioned before, there is no Scorch here. Obviously, we're seeing a lot of 14s in hand and on board. Hana-chan wishing he had that card in his hand, but obviously it doesn't really fit into his deck. I think he just found more use in cards like Ida and, for example, Operator. And we see here ADC being used as well, which is a card that maybe indicates there's a hero pass trying to get from Talbot. Obviously, he would just use his lesser value protectors, but in the end, Hana-chan knows this, doesn't take the bait, and passes immediately.
Yeah, wonderful read from Hana-chan there, knowing that he could get hero pass. 42 points in 2 cards is significant, and yeah, just a fantastic read. So this is a really key round 3. There is significant power coming out for both players. We have 30 points. That's going to go higher from Dolblathana Protectors because of spells. Marching orders, I believe, would be pulling a Sage or a Mercenary, which would result in another beer. So there are real points on the board for Talbot. can Hana-chan catch up to this?
And like we said before, there is no counter here for the protectors. We see again the operator not finding the greatest targets. I mean, it's a chance that you have to get the agitators and get the great combo, but if you don't get it off, it's not fantastic. And obviously, really the rounds don't matter here. There's just standard points here. There's no drought ticking, for example, but still not ideal in operator. And we see Tailbot one card less, but much higher value in some of these cards like protectors that are growing so much, and marching orders as well. Does Hana-chan have enough points with the cards he has in hand to beat this and to win this game?
Yeah, I'm really puzzled by this operator strategy. Not going on the agitators when you have them in your hand early on is so bizarre. Agitator is just so widely regarded as just a perfect target, but I'm sure there is a reasoning behind it, so I'll be interested to see if it does pay off for Hana-chan. But in terms of points per card, Tailbot right now is absolutely smashing it, right?
Exactly, and the Mercenary does help where it does get a bit more value because you have that marksman on your board, and you can get a tiny bit of value compared to your opponent, but you're really just adding the 7 points from the operator plus that difference. And if you look at a silver card, you're looking at least 12 to 14 points of value, especially in a round 3 finish where you want to get the maximum amount of points possible. And Hana-chan is not going to find that with operator, so again, not ideal target.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the Hitori ends up pulling. I imagine it will be an agitator for another mercenary. So there are significant points in Hana-chan's cards right now, but I just don't know whether it'll be enough to overcome this. It's going to be a very close round, too early to call at this point.
You see a lot of points here already, and 10 more from the mercenary, 59 points. Does Hana-chan have enough? I mean, we're seeing some 21-point protectors. They block the mercenary hits as well with the Quen signs, maybe. We can see a little bit of a lucky play here from Tailbot if it is really close. If that marksman hit lands on that Quen protector, it might be game deciding. We're going to just find out.
It may well be, and also if it's game deciding between the points between giving Tailbot a agitator and a mercenary, that would be particularly painful for Hana-chan too. But this is an incredibly tense round. Tailbot able to go up to 57 points of value once he plays that mercenary, but then what is that to catch? That is going to be 33 points to catch for Hana-chan. Barclay from Hitori can do 20 or so. This is going to be an incredibly close round.
It's going to be close, and again, Hana-chan coming into this round a card up, but Tailbot with 5 protectors, such high amount of protectors, even being bled out of so many of them in round 2, it might just be enough, the strategy that he's playing here. Especially, and the marksman.
Hit the Quen!
It does hit the Quen. That's incredible. That might be game deciding.
Well, actually, no. Okay, it was going to hit the Quen because he moved it. But now that hits the mercenary. So he moved the Quen protector, which ate the Quen up and guaranteed the hit. But now we see Barclay coming out.
He knows to get those.
No, it's just actually no. Tailbot's got this one. That's not going to be enough.
Yeah, it's not enough.
It's not enough. It is so close.
By
53 to 52. Tailbot stays alive by 1 point. Unbelievable finish to this game.
By a single point, like you said before, the Quen obviously doesn't matter because he is going to get, if he needs that +3 buff, he has to move a unit anyway. He moves the Quen unit, he enables, there's no RNG there from the opponent's marksman trying to hit there. And by a single point, Tailbot stays in this, ties the series 2-2. This is absolutely incredible. I mean, going so close and, being able to win by 1 point in this such an important match, it's fantastic.
Yeah, 52 to 53 is just the most unbelievable match ending for that. As long as Tailbot hasn't had a heart attack at this point, he is in with a chance of progressing to the final today. That is absolutely phenomenal. Coming back from 2-0 down to be 2-2. We're heading into our final game right now. And this is it. This is for a place in the final and, therefore, a spot at Challenger as well.
And we are seeing a very interesting Radovid deck here from Tailbot, not something we've seen all tournament long. It is really the only deck that has this very strong mix between thinning and control, kind of like a Henselt Radovid deck, but it is running Radovid, of course, and also a very interesting gold card. What do you think about, well, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, Handmarvin's Blue Dream is a card that is one of the unique cards so far this tournament. Only Tailbot is running it in this deck. And there's a good reason for that. It is not a widely popular card, despite the fact that its natural synergy with things such as Dijkstra is really enormous. The ability to play 2 Dijkstras is funny because Dijkstra is more unreliable the earlier you play it, right? So traditionally you thin down to potentially even just 2 cards and then play your Dijkstra, but Handmarvin's allows you to play it twice, so it adds a little bit of chaos into the deck, but really fascinating to see this card in action.
I think most players do favor consistency and try and favor, guaranteed results. But of course, Handmarvin's Blue Dream, a card that doesn't really do that. It depends on your opponent's graveyard, what cards he uses as well. So it's tricky to use properly. It has that Dijkstra synergy that might be, a game deciding for Tailbot. But in the end, it's a risky card to play in the tournament.
Yeah, but we see Tailbot doing the reverse Petrify and drawing all 4 golds out of his deck in his opening hand. So that puts him in a great position.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Tailbot being able to go second in this last game, I think, is massive for him. It gives you, a fairly solid, chance to play your game a bit more safely. You really don't have to, maybe waste some plays just to create high tempo in round 1. You can play a bit safer, thin out your deck with the Blue Stripe Scout, for example. And I think Tailbot, he's in a fairly good position.
Yeah, I really love this hybrid deck from Tailbot. I enjoyed watching this a lot yesterday as well, so I'm interested to see it in action. However, outside of that Death Mold and maybe Shani on Death Mold as well, Gold Weather clears could be problematic. Shani on Death Mold is a very low tempo play to clear the weather.
Yeah, exactly. He has the clear at least, which is better than some players that don't bring any clears to this tournament. A risky move. Makes your deck a little bit less powerful in terms of point generation, but also, of course, saves you from a big, difficulty later on. Death Mold can get res by Shani, we're seeing on screen, and adds 2 armor to it as well, but the main thing is Death Mold's ability that can clear skies and obviously clear this golden weather.
Yeah, and one of the real things as well is those ballistas will be very powerful. While it isn't going to have the explosive power of Henselt onto Ballista, Scoia'tael plays a lot of similarly strength units. Like we see right now, Ballista would already be doing tremendous damage to these Blue Mountains.
And we see First Light can obviously clear the weather, completely negate a golden weather by just using a bronze card is fantastic. Obviously it would be a silver card in Death Mold summoning that First Light, but still a great combo and a great way to prevent that golden weather from getting a lot of value.
Yeah, I find it really interesting, these hands, how they're going to pair up. Will we finally see an Operator onto an Agitator now that he's playing against Northern Realms, where he can be pretty confident they're not playing Bronze Dwarves? So it'll be interesting to see how Operator is used again. I feel like Operator, if I'm honest, has been a big sticking point for Hannah-chan this series.
And now, important to note, we're seeing Hen Marvin's Blue Dream. It can res a spell like Drought or like Ragnarug. And do we see any clears, for example, from Hannah-chan? He does have that one Ida. That could be a good answer, but that's pretty much it. So, maybe we can see Hannah-chan being beaten in his own game as well throughout this game.
Oh my goodness, that is such a good point. The Han Marvins for the Drought is crazy. Hannah-chan has the movement to keep things on one row generally, but that is a really good point. If this is returned, there could be no answer for it. We haven't seen Ida come out yet. That could be momentous in this match.
You have Broover that can pretty much summon Ida at any point in time, so you have that answer always ready to go. But you're wasting Broover on that instead of a card like, for example, Barclay Elves. It's really your key finisher in this matchup, so you're wasting something there as well. And the fact that there is really no bronze units to clear the weather as well, it's just that one Ida, so it could be tricky if Hannah-chan doesn't read into this play and maybe play around it as well.
Yeah, it's going to be a very, very tough matchup for him if that does occur. We need to see Barclay Elves coming out as well at some point for Hattori, but we're just going to see the Agitators go. Once again, it looks like they might be being played without getting Operated. Operator just going on a Dwarven Mercenary potentially again in this matchup. Do you think there could be any reasoning for that? Because genuinely, I'm blank. I'm sure Twitch chat is spamming us right now with the reason, but can you think of any reason to operate a Mercenary and not an Agitator?
I can't, no. I think Hannah-chan is just a very risky player. He wants to get that Operator round 3 onto an Agitator. I think he sees that Operator isn't really the most high-tempo play in this round, and I think Hannah-chan really values high tempo with this deck. We've seen play Zoltan round 1 every single game until now, not using that as a finisher, but instead try and create a lot of pressure on his opponent to maybe pass early and give him, the long round with the weather and the movement in round 3. So Hannah-chan, a player that really favors very high tempo with this deck for round 1, and maybe the reason you don't want to play Operator, it's not high tempo. It's a 7-point silver, not great for round 1.
Yeah, for sure. I think that Tailbot's actually in quite a nice position, though. The Natalis Commander's Horn is available very easily, but looks like actually he'll be going for something else here. Going for a reinforcement, bringing out another Blue Stripe Scout. Let's go. They are really thinning the deck and powering up his tempo here and buffing those future Temerian infantry.
He is playing around Golden Weather by stacking that front row quite a bit and not stacking that range row, for example. But we see a Lacerate in Hannah-chan's hand. Lacerate can really punish that stack in the melee row, and it'll be a quite high tempo play for a bronze spell. It's quite fantastic for Hannah-chan.
Yeah, it's a really, really interesting position to be in. That Lacerate is just going to completely wreck. Yavin goes into the row, signaling, I dare say, the Lacerate a little bit. We see Muzzle, not the other Gold Weather, come out. So Hannah-chan without his Ragnarok right now, but he does have Muzzle. Muzzle can have some very, very good applications. It typically can be a little bit better against Henselt because you can use it to deny Henselt targets, but here you can use it to deny sort of crewman opportunities. So there's some good stuff that you can do with Muzzle in this match for Hannah-chan.
And Yavin, of course, a card that synergizes well with the faction it's being played in. Most cards, like Ulrich, for example, discard a card, synergizes well with discard. But Yavin, it draws a spell from your deck, and like you said, it's a random spell. You can't choose. So he got Muzzle there. He did not get the second Golden Weather. He has Lacerate in hand already, so only one spell left. It was a 50-50. In the end, he got Muzzle, not the worst card, but maybe he needed that Golden Weather.
if Hannah-chan was to really want to all in on his weather, even though it would be a 6-point gold, he could theoretically steal the Death Mold and prevent the Shani res on it, which would leave Tailbot so open to Ragnarok. So there's interesting things that you can do here. Tailbot goes to the pass. Very interesting, giving Hannah-chan just an opportunity to go to -1 to take this round.
I think Tailbot is aware of Hannah-chan's possibility to create a lot of tempo with cards on the board like the Blown Commandos, and maybe that last rate as well that he's kind of signaling with that Yavin play. And he knows that if he plays too much into this, maybe he falls behind and loses the advantage that the coin flip gave him initially at the start of this game. And he decides to pass here. Like you said, it could be risky. He has Shani for the Death Mold, but I mean, you can't really use the muzzle here. It's not enough points to catch up, so at least he saves himself from that as well.
Yeah, I think we might just see the last rate coming out here because it's going to be rough for him to get a much better opportunity. Here it goes on the melee row. Woomph going for a whopping 21 points. He didn't even cast it. My apologies. I just got jebaited by Hannah-chan. There we go. There he goes. So that is a huge muzzle, giving Hannah-chan the round at -1. There's no carryover for Tailbot. He hasn't got his Ronvid of the small marsh out. So yeah, it's looking pretty good for Hannah-chan right now.
Exactly. I mean, talking about carryover, we do see the Elven War Dancer, which can be used as carryover because once it gets mulligan, it goes straight to the board, and it can prevent dry passes. In this case, Hannah-chan winning the round doesn't really need it for that reason. Still getting that little point swing at the beginning is great if you want to, really bleed out in round 2.
Yeah, we see a very, very interesting graveyard. Checking it out. Let's see what Hannah-chan goes for. It looks like he mulliganed it and drew into his Ida, actually.
Yeah, an Ida card that you typically don't need, but if Han Marvin's Blue Dream is played into Weather, Ida, a good card to have in hand. And Hannah-chan obviously knows Tailbot's deck list. Maybe he's reading into this and knows to try and play around that and, save Ida for later on.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see what that's put to work on. I think he's going to need to operate an Agitator to make sure these marksmen get maximum value with the Dwarven Mercenaries. He also needs to play Barkley this round for the Hattori target, so I would expect to see Hannah-chan play into this round a little bit. He's actually going to open up with a marksman, choosing to negate the deploy effect of that card and just prepare it on the board for future movement.
And playing into this round, if Tailbot's able to catch up here, he is able to, stay a card up for round 3, and that's absolutely massive, obviously, in this game that matters so much for both players. And obviously, if you're using Golden Weather, although Hannah-chan did not draw it, you want a long round 3. But cards like Ballista, for example, can also generate a lot of points in round 3 as well. So maybe he's trying to just bleed out a few of these important cards for Tailbot.
And here we see the Radovid going to lock that. Doesn't want any of this movement nonsense. Again, giving up a point on the Radovid by killing a 3-strength unit with it. But both players just seem very reluctant to really commit into this round.
And Tailbot staying ahead here. We do see Ida coming out immediately. And what does that do? That opens up space here for Han Marvin's Blue Dream. Hannah-chan knows about this card. Can Tailbot really find this opportunity here and try and go for that play?
I mean, Tailbot is going to be thinking in the back of his mind he wants that for round 3, right? He wants to get this round done as quick as possible, and then he wants to play this Han Marvin's Blue Dream and steal that drought and have a long drought round, playing the Gold Weather against the Gold Weather player, and it would be devastating. I've got to say, I was actually swapped. I really like Tailbot's position in this game.
The only problem is that Tailbot has no control over this round. Hannah-chan did win round 1, and he decides when to pass and when to go into the round 3. For that reason, Tailbot can't really, get too cocky with Han Marvin's Blue Dream. He has to really decide when it's time to use it. Round 2, round 3, and at what point he really wants to get the maximum value, or maybe the maximum pressure by using it.
Yeah, here we see a Ballista go down next to Radovid. Radovid, of course, having crewmen, allowing it to shoot twice. Those units very conveniently lined up at the same strength due to Ida's low base power. But yeah, Ballistas are such a powerful unit, and that Siege Master is just waiting to triple fire that Ballista at anything else put down.
And again, mind games here from Hannah-chan. He plays a Fog. He maybe says, I don't have Drought, I'm going to play this Fog instead. But Tailbot can't know this. He doesn't know if it's a trick or not. And he asked that he can't really use that Shani to clear it just yet. And that's going to add up to quite a lot of points here. Tailbot, of course, does not have any Armor Smiths in his deck. They're solely Skellige units, not going to be found in Northern Realms. And that means, he's in a bit of a predicament here.
Yeah, you're so correct reading the mind game read there. Because, of course, Ragnarok is still in the deck. He knows this. He's seen Hannah-chan's list. He's played against it already, for goodness sake. So he's not going to spend his only Weather Clear on a Fog, and it just means that that damage is going to sneak up. Like, next turn it will already have been 6 points from that Fog, so it's really just going to be creeping value that is going to help Hannah-chan bleed Tailbot here.
And Marksman here coming down maybe, or Battering Ram, sorry, coming down. With the Crewman synergy, it does a decent bit of control. It can really, start to pin down this Marksman maybe and get some points on it as well. Maybe try and kill it the next few rounds. But in the end, this Marksman might still find a bit of value here with movement from the Dwarven Agitator.
Yeah, looks like he's going for the muzzle here. Mostly just a value play. It's stopping the Siege Master from reactivating it and forcing Siege Master to go on a Ballista instead. So it's actually a nice little muzzle there. 14 points and denying the better Siege Master target right now.
And Hannah-chan obviously playing into this round. If he's able to get card advantage back, it's fantastic. If not, he might be in a lot of trouble round 3, being a card down, with so few cards being left, maybe if they play into this round a lot more, if he decides to bleed a lot more. So it's really dangerous here. I mean, Hanatan really has to see what he wants to play, what he wants to keep for round 3, and how far he wants to bleed here.
Yeah, I mean, I expect to still see the Barclay Elves come out this round, which will really, really be the moment where Hanachan gets the opportunity to seize back card advantage, because that's going to create a big point swing in his favour. So, like you say, it'll be very interesting to see how far he pushes into this round, and will we finally see an Agitator operated.
But then again, Infantryman and Tailbot's hand, he has a big point swing to answer that Barclay Elves. I mean, both players have the decent chance here, I think. And of course, the Ballista here with a double crewman, going to do a lot of damage and stay just enough ahead, I think, here to be able to not fall behind in tempo here. The Fog only taking for 2 points of damage, and it's not quite enough for Hanatan to catch up.
Yeah, so here comes the Bruvahu, most likely going into the Barclay Elves play. There he is. So Barclay Elves comes out, which summons a mercenary, and he's going to move that marksman and fire a shot with it.
And this can disrupt the crewman synergy as well, but he decides to just go for the full damage here with a marksman. A great play here, an infantryman will not be enough here because of that fog damage, and that means that obviously you can't use Dijkstra either because the infantrymen are still in the deck, and that would really ruin the draws as well. So Tailbot may be found in a position he doesn't want to be in, and finally Hanatan might just find the pass here to go into even cards into round 3 with Hattori Barclay Elves still available as a combo, and finally the Operator Agitator combo as well.
Yeah, it's a real question for Tailbot here. How does he handle this round? Because the Ballista isn't representing a really significant amount of value. He can get a decent double shot on it with the Bruderhug and the Marksman, but he wants to keep the Temerians and he wants to keep Dijkstra, so Tailbot's going to have to cut some of his resources loose and kind of just, make sure he ends up with at least one strong finish for round 3.
You can go for a Shawnee Deathbolt now. It's a bit late, but it still gets the triple heal on those units for 2 points because of the most recent Clear Skies buff in the recent patch. So, I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world, and there's just some armor there as well, just in case Hanatan decides to somehow damage that maybe with a movement tool with the Marksman as well, pinging it. So, the armor, not too bad, but Hanatan finally finds the pass he was looking for, and he still keeps the Hattori Operator Agitator combo. So I think Hanatan, this is the best he could have wished for.
Yeah, it's really great, and I do like both players' hands here. Tailbot's got a very powerful hand. He's going to spend the Ballista to take the round, so he'll have Temerian Infantry and Dijkstra and Han Marvins. Han Marvins can play that Drought, but Hanachan does have Ida Remain through Hattori, right? So he can clear it as well. It's a really crazy hand, and he looks like he's finally going to get what he wants on his round 3 Agitator Operator. So we're going to see some very powerful hands coming out, and these draws are going to be very key.
We've seen a lot of gold already from Hanatan, so Tailbot really has a lot to choose from here. He has Zoltan as well, and also Muzzle, so I think Zoltan might just be the best choice here. Considering that you can pull that Zoltan and boost it by 2, he might just want to, maybe mulligan that Hen Marvins and pull it from Dijkstra for the, flashy effect for the viewers. I think he decides to keep it in hand, play it safe, and maybe try and find a pass to the final later on today.
Yeah, I think so, and it looks like we're going to see it. Here it goes, Operator finally operating an Agitator. Fantastic card for that combo, and that's going to give him a lot of tempo. It's a really, really great target for this almost dead card for Tailbot.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously we see infantrymen come down immediately because obviously they would block the Dijkstra pulls otherwise, but now the deck has been thinned. There's a lot of good stuff, hopefully for Tailbot, waiting in the very last part of his deck. He's thinned his deck a lot, maybe saved the best for last with a Dijkstra synergy as well, and obviously Agitator wants to pull it off immediately, buy some time, and use maybe that useless card right now.
Yeah, it's going to be really crazy to see how this unfolds, ladies and gentlemen. There are 4 cards for each player standing between them and a place in the final and a place in Challenger next month. This is an incredibly important round of Gwent. All rounds of Gwent are important, but of course, this one is even more so. So this is a crazy, crazy ending to a series. Both players on such a level footing.
One important thing to note, no gold weather, so no real synergy with movement. We see no marksmen, we see no BMCs either. So in the end here, there's movement, sure, but it's not adding that many points here for Hanachan.
What do we see the Han Marvins do? Do you think he'll go for the Drought?
I think the Zoltan is the key here. It's just guaranteed value. You can't really be countered at all. And you get the +2 boost on a unit as well, so that's quite fantastic, I think. But also Dijkstra, a great gold card. It can be very RNG heavy depending on how you prepare your deck and how you thin it out to round 3, but it can also be, we've seen even in tournaments, 70 to 80 point Dijkstra with the right plays in the right situation, so we'll see what we can find here.
Oh yeah, very reminiscent of the old Reaver Hunter days with the 80-point Dijkstras, but it is still an incredibly powerful card. I think you're right. I think Zoltan is the reliable target for the Han Marvins, and we could see Tailbot's place in the final clinched with Han Marvin's Blue Dream. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think the key here is that Hannington is really disrupting the commander's horn in the back row, because he did use the mercenary to move the units from the back row to the range row, and obviously there is no marksman there to synergize with that, so you're obviously losing points by not buffing your own units. And I think the key there is trying to disrupt the commander's horn coming from Dijkstra, and that would be a great finish, just that one card pull.
Yeah, it's a really fantastic tactic to just split up those units, deny the horn value, make Dijkstra less efficient. So this is great play going on by both players, both managing to keep their cool in this incredibly tense situation. But we are going to see very shortly who takes the place in today's final.
But of course, Han Marvin's Blue Dream draws Zoltan, stacks one row, and you have the commander's horn anyway. So maybe Hannington playing maybe too safe and not risking the fact that maybe the Tilbot has that Blue Dream card, and it can make so that, I mean, the commander's horn is going to happen anyway, so you're just losing points by moving those units instead of, buffing your own.
Yeah, it's really, really going to come down to that. I think final play action is huge here, which is down to Hannah-chan, but here it comes. Here comes the Han Marvin's Blue Dream.
And the fact that maybe there's, with 4 cards left, the commander's horn can, maybe it doesn't get pulled as well, but we see here Tailbot deciding to stack that back row, moving, as many units as possible, even though there's 6 units, just to make sure that even if one is moved now, he still has the full targets for Commander's Horn. Tailbot, a 20-point gap, 2 cards left for Hannington, and Dijkstra's still not played. Yeah. Maybe it's just way too many points.
This is crazy. Commander's Horn cannot be blocked now. He can move one unit all he likes, but there is still going to be 5 on that row for a 20-point horn if it comes out of Dijkstra. So there is some crazy, crazy tension going on here right now, but I just think the brute force of this Dijkstra is going to be too much. Tailbot must have this. Dijkstra can't backfire that much, although that is famous last words when you're playing Dijkstra.
Dijkstra versus Mercenary. Dijkstra wins that battle most of the times. We're going to see if it happens here as well. Tailbot might just punch his ticket to the final, and with that, a chance to go to the Challenger as well. We're going to see here Dijkstra unfold, see what it can pull here. It's all really in his hands now. Let's see what beat he can pull out for us.
Absolutely. Well, we're all waiting on the Dijkstra right now. All we can do is ramble until it's played. We need to see this Dijkstra come down, and we need to see what it does.
We're just all viewers now in this Dijkstra game.
We're all viewers now. There's Ronvid
Not
doing it for Maid Bilberry. Let's go.
Not Commander's Horn. Still a decent card. And
Commander's Horn.
But Commander's Horn, that absolutely seals the deal for Tailbot. Huge point gap. Hannah-chan knows this. He forfeits, and Tailbot, the reverse sweep. We said at the beginning he could emulate Freddy, get the reverse sweep, and come back and win this game. And we saw it happen here. I mean, Tailbot with a huge lead. Obviously on Polish Soul, he has that superpower. Yeah. He has that home advantage, but Hannah-chan, I think he's devastated. Yeah, he's got that Polski power, you're right. It's the home grounds, but unbelievable mental fortitude from Tailbot there, pulling off the reverse sweep. Good show of sportsmanship from both players. Well played by both. What a fantastic series of Gwent. That was absolutely stunning.